listened to a few of your debates. I like the one with Alex Stein about the fake moon landing. That was pretty cool.
Cool.
And then what was the other one that I liked? I don't remember. But a lot of times, I feel like you, because I see your points, But I feel like you kind of, do you hate religious? Like, do you hate religious people?
No.
Honestly.
No.
Okay. Because a lot of times I just feel like you kind of have this like hatred for religious people or something. Like, I was just trying to make sure because I just feel like you kind of feel like religious people are evil or something,
No.
But that's fine. But it's kind of like, do you, if there was an explosion that made this planet get created at one point, form itself, or something like that, what led to this explosion or to this event? I mean, that thing that made this whole thing happen could be like an entity or an energy or whatever. Um, what if basically when we say God, that's actually what it's referring to. So even science is kind of saying something similar, why wouldn't we call that God?
Because it doesn't have a mind. There's no intentionality, no meaning, no purpose to it. Didn't create any person named Jesus. No rising from the dead. No Muhammad. It didn't interact with anyone at any point ever. It's a quantum field.
Okay, well, basically, I used to believe people were just like blindly, in a weird way, um, following some books and following some icons,
Okay.
like with no sense or something. But I feel like civilizations for a long time, they came to a point where they were asking, they was like, okay, actually, let's cut the shit. What is this all about? Like, let's try to make some meaning of this. What's the purpose? What's the logic behind all of this? Was this all random? Why are humans especially capable to acquire more knowledge and memory than other animals, than the rest of the animals? Could it be that somebody made this or something made this intentionally? These are kind of logical questions that I think it's okay to have, and I think a lot of civilizations came to the conclusion that this was intentionally done or something like that,
Yeah,
which I don't think it's
people make up
but it's not.
stories all the time. So people making up stories and coming to a conclusion isn't evidence it's true. In fact, it's more likely that it's false. If a bunch of people made up a story and a bunch of communities came to the conclusion that Santa Claus is real, that would not be evidence that Santa Claus was real. At one point in time, most communities thought the world was flat. They were all wrong at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, but I could see why they would think the earth is flat.
Because they
Like,
didn't
don't you think it
have
was normal for
evidence.
them? Well, they didn't have evidence that the earth was a globe either
Right. And
back then.
so what they should do is they should withhold judgment until evidence is provided. That's what they should do.
So what you're saying is they shouldn't believe the earth was neither flat or a globe
The flat
at that
earth, I
point?
mean, that's fine because as long as you look around and you see things are flat. But thinking a God created the universe, no, they should not believe that a God created the universe. That is not something they should believe. The flat earth is less ridiculous than religion.
I see, but it's kind of like it would be kind of ridiculous to just go ahead and never and just say we have no idea, we don't know, or
No,
whatever,
that's the smart thing to do. It's intelligent to admit when you don't know. That's wisdom. That's in science, one of the principles, admit when you don't know. Don't just make stuff up. Making stuff up is not good. No, don't do that.
Well, it's not. It's not. I'm not suggesting that somebody has evidence for it or something. I'm not here to try to say, here we go. This is the evidence. Do you agree or not? I think it's something more like, because everybody, any groups of people who throughout time they try to make meaning of those things logically. I think I don't think they're bad faith. Like, I don't think they're trying to brainwash the people or something.
Some of
I
them
think
were, but
it's
yeah,
it could have
most of them were not. They were just wrong. They just were wrong a lot. So I agree, most of them were not bad faith. They were just wrong. They had wrong ideas about what evidence is. They didn't understand fallacies and biases and illusions and delusions, and so they had wrong beliefs based on those things.
Okay, so basically, if we talk legally, say, so because we live in a society and we have laws. Say somebody is accused of murder, we play by the legal rules. So now so now we have to prove that something did happen. So until then, we're gonna say this person is,
Innocence until
yeah,
proven guilty,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So but that's not the same when we're talking about creator of the earth. Can
Yes,
you
it
agree?
is. Yes, it is. So anything that you think created the earth is innocent until proven guilty that they did it. So they did not do it until evidence that they did it is provided.
What I'm basically trying to say is it wouldn't be fair in a society to say, well, we don't know if he's a murderer or not. He could be, he couldn't be. Like, we have to say,
No, that is fair. It is fair to
we
say
don't we have to.
know. We don't know is the fair thing to say. You should always say we don't know until evidence is provided.
Okay, so then why shouldn't we say we don't know in the case of creation of the earth?
We should say we don't know until there's evidence provided.
Oh, I see, I see. But aren't you saying that God doesn't exist? Or are you saying that God could exist?
Before there's any evidence one way or the other, sure, but we have lots of evidence God does not exist, which is why we conclude God does not exist.
When you say we have evidence for God to not exist, are you saying is the evidence the fact that we don't have evidence for the existence of God?
Yep. That in combination with the fact that we have lots of reasons to believe that the things humans make up are purely imaginary. So if you made it up and there's no evidence, we're rational to conclude it's purely imaginary.
Okay, I mean that kind of sounds kind of bad faith. Like, that doesn't sound logically consistent. Why can't you just say we don't know, or could exist? Just like you're saying somebody could be a murderer. Anybody could be a murderer, right?
Because we have lots and lots of evidence that human minds make stuff up. So, like if someone makes up the idea of Santa Claus, big fat guy, red suit, white beard, puts presents around people's trees, it's rational for us, given the knowledge we have, to know that, oh, humans make stuff up, so that's probably a made up thing that doesn't exist. Same with leprechauns, fairies, unicorns, Zeus, uh, Yahweh, God, all the same. We have lots and lots of evidence people make stuff up. Therefore, for anything that people just talk about, we can know that it's in their imagination. They've made it up in their imagination. And we don't know whether or not it exists outside of their imagination. So we can say it's at least just a figment of your imagination. And that's probably all it is until you provide evidence, because that's all of them are until you provide evidence.
Okay, but so ignore of that. Like, literally imagine you're thinking for yourself.
Yeah.
Like, don't take into consideration what other people are thinking, that they invented Christmas or something. What you yourself are thinking about the creation of the earth. So,
Sure.
not based on what others are saying, but could you say by just by thinking about it, just by thinking about how the earth was created, or could you then, by thinking about it, could you say, yeah, maybe this explosion was caused by an entity that is all powerful? It could exist.
Only if you had evidence. So what you're doing there is you're making up stuff in your brain. And we know when humans make up stuff in their brain, it's not reasonable to believe simply because they made it up in their brain. It's called making stuff up. So if I, without considering any of the evidence of other people, started to think about what caused the universe, and I came to the conclusion that God created the universe, all I've done is use my brain to make stuff up, and I made up an explanation. Is that explanation reasonable? No, because all I did was make it up. For it to be reasonable, you need evidence. You need something that's more than just something I made up in my brain.
Well, yeah, I mean, as I said, I just think it sounds kind of not logically consistent, because
what
you're
about that is
saying,
not logically consistent? So if I'm making stuff up in my head, I'm just imagining stuff. All of that stuff, purely imaginary. There's no reason to believe any of it. It's just I just made it up in my brain. Then when I have evidence, when I can actually say, if this is true, here's a test we can do, and if this test is confirmed and I have reason to believe it, then we have evidence and it's reasonable to believe, but never before that. What about that is not consistent?
because you're saying, oh, somebody can be a murderer, we don't know, but you can say, oh, maybe God exists, we don't know.
Well, no.
I feel
So
like you
everything
should
is
be saying,
innocent until proven guilty. He is not a murderer. Innocent isn't maybe. Innocent is he did not do it. So if someone is
yes,
innocent,
yes, but you said we don't know. It could be. You said it could be.
there's always a could be. Could be's don't matter. Everyone is innocent. Even if they could
Oh,
be
I
the
see.
murderer, they're still innocent. They're innocent, 100% innocent until proven guilty. So the could be's don't
Yeah,
matter.
but
We don't care.
that's because we play by these legal rules. That's how we need to function. But we're not
It's
talking
called
about that. So we don't need
epistemology.
to we don't need to use this logic.
No, we
But
do
okay, whatever.
we do need
It
to
was
lose that logic. This logic has been employed not only in the legal system but in every system, because that's how evidence works.
we need to use this logic to protect the people, basically.
For evidence.
To that's we can't you go by another logic. It would the system wouldn't work. That's why we need to use this logic in the
Evidence.
system.
It's called evidence. We need evidence.
What I'm saying is, you could say, you know what, the state could say, well, maybe this guy, maybe he is guilty, but we're not supposed to say that. Maybe not supposed to say, yeah, maybe this guy, he's a murderer. We should say,
This
well,
is the
ideally,
exact same as
but
science. Science doesn't say maybe it is string theory. Like, no, we say we're going to wait until we have evidence, and until there's evidence, it is not that it's not that. No. So we wait until we have evidence. Always wait until you have evidence.
yeah, but you don't have evidence for. What I'm saying is, you don't basically you don't know if the guy is a murderer or not
That
until
doesn't
it's
matter. That's literally irrelevant. Who cares? What matters is what do we have evidence for? You know
okay. Hear
nothing
me out.
until
Hear
you
me
have
out.
evidence.
I see. I know what
Knowledge
you're
is
saying,
a
but hear
justified
me out.
true belief. You know
Okay, but hear me
nothing
out.
unless you have a justification.
It's I understand what you're saying, but look,
I don't
it's
think you do.
basically well, what I'm saying is the guy could be a murderer. He could be
This is
or he
called an
couldn't.
argument
We
from
don't know.
ignorance
We
fallacy.
don't know.
What you're saying is
But we
literally
don't know.
wait, stop. We know what you're saying. What you're saying is called an argument from ignorance fallacy. An argument from ignorance is saying you don't know, therefore it could be X. It's argument from ignorance. That is not
But that's
evidence.
what you're doing also.
No,
But you're doing that.
I'm saying you have no evidence. That's the conclusion. We have good evidence to
Okay.
conclude God does not exist because it's a figment of human imagination. Figments of human imagination have good evidence they don't
Okay,
exist.
give me a second. Give me a second. Let me just try to. It will be very very short. So basically, the guy, he could be a murderer. He could not be. But in order for this system to function for all of us, we
This has
have to
nothing to
say.
do with the
We
system.
have to say.
There's no system.
Okay,
This is not about
just give me
law.
a moment.
Everything could or could not be. Could and could not be are irrelevant. It either is or it is not. And you have evidence for it either is or it is not. Could be doesn't matter. There is no could be. Could be is not in the sentence. There is no could be. There is things we have evidence for, things we do not have evidence for. It's one of those.
But you're saying the planet could be made naturally without God.
No, I'm saying we have evidence for that.
Evidence for
There is no could. We have evidence for that. No coulds.
Yeah, you have evidence for the Big Bang?
Yes.
Like what?
Like the cosmic microwave background radiation, the novel testable predictions of the redshift in the universe, the novel testable predictions that have been made on standard candles throughout the universe using, I forget what they're called, quasars, the measurements of the LIGO experiment. There are tons and tons of evidence for the Big Bang.
But anything that led to all these things happening to create the Earth could be done by God.
No, there is no could be. There are things that have evidence and things that do not have evidence. That's in the things that don't have evidence. That's just garbage. So you put that in the garbage can.
But why are all these things moving around? All these asteroids, all these things.
It's gravity.
Why? Where is it starting from?
So remember, there's two categories here. There is no could. Could is not a category. The categories are things that have evidence, and there's a category of things that do not have evidence. Those are the only two categories. There is no could. So of the things that have evidence, those are the only ones we're allowed to posit. The things that have no evidence, they're garbage. We put them in the garbage can. God has no evidence. He goes in the garbage can. Things that have evidence, like gravity, cosmic microwave background radiation, Big Bang, those are reasonable. Those are logical. Those are things that we can believe. God, in the no evidence category, goes in the garbage can.
Yeah, but we don't know how it started. We don't know why.
No.
All these asteroids and all these things started.
Wait. You keep not understanding here. No and could don't matter here. There's two categories: things that have evidence, things that do not have evidence. I don't care about what you think you know. I don't care what you think is possible.
You're not logically consistent.
No, this is part. What about this? What about is not logically consistent? Things that have evidence, one box. Things that do not have evidence, a different box. That's perfectly consistent. It's P or not P. Basic logic.
Yeah, whatever. Well, we don't know why this.
You're destroyed, kid. Get better. Get good. All right. Who's next? What's up? I cannot hear you. Try restarting Discord, maybe. What's up?
What's up? Hear me?
Yep.
Sweet. I just got to work through something in my head real quick. I guess it's more of a question for you. I'm not like
what's the
trying to
question?
debate you or anything. Sweet. So if something's objective, it exists independently of the mind, right?
Like no, it exists independently of any opinion of a mind.
Okay, that's a little different. So when we say morality is objective, like if you look up, you like to reference the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. When you look up moral naturalism, and it compares morality to a language like mathematics, like moral truths are like 1 + 1 = 2, right?
Moral naturalism doesn't do that. That's
no
moral semantics.
No. Well, so
like there are different models of moral realism that do that, but they're like morality as a platonic object or an abstract object. That's also a version of moral realism, not one I subscribe to. Moral naturalism is that morality is a thing in nature, not a language.
So how does that what form does that take? If it's a thing in nature, like you say, it could be a law of physics, but like, is it something acting upon minds, yes, causing it to think that?
Sort of.
So that's what we
So like one way for it to be would be is like if the amount of energy it takes to form the belief that murder is wrong is less than the amount of energy it takes to form the belief murder is right. Like if all moral beliefs were more entropically more efficient than all incorrect moral beliefs, that would be some fact of the universe is governing that moral beliefs are the correct moral beliefs are the ones that are the most efficient. And so there would be some fact of the universe determining which ones are the correct moral ones and the incorrect moral ones based off of the amount of energy they take. And that's just one of infinitely many ways it could happen.
Gotcha. I think that's okay. I'm just working through it. I think that's all I needed. All right. Yep. Thanks.
Who's next? Kino, what's up?
Hi.
Hi.
I also had a question on morality. Sure. I think if I understood your model correctly, you traced all moral events and then saw that it's aligns with what was it?
Involuntary
no infringement of will.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it was I mostly compared morality like to something like taste, like a taste experience of food, where it's like evolutionary impact of high energy foods like sugars or something.
Yep.
Evolutionary beneficial. Therefore, we see that pattern in animals. They like these things. Would that make taste objective then?
No, because my model is that it's not product of evolution. So my model is that evolution, or that morality, is going to come about from any conscious agent, whether or not they come about by evolution. So AIs who don't evolve will develop morality. If there's like a computer thing that didn't evolve, it's going to have morality. So my model is that it's something that is fundamental to all life, not just evolutionary byproduct. If it was just evolutionary, it would not be objective in the sense that I'm talking about.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense, because I was confused about where you would draw the distinction between those. But how do you, like, where did you feel like, how does your confidence come from that you have enough evidence that leads you there? Or like, where does your
It's a hypothesis.
conviction
There
come
isn't
from?
enough evidence, like string theory. We haven't confirmed the
Yeah,
evidence.
but you proposed the hypothesis, right?
Yeah.
So like, what made you propose it?
It came into my imagination just like string theory did. We looked at the evidence, found a pattern. This seems to fit the pattern, infer a conclusion, a hypothesis, and then try to find predictions that it makes. It's just the same thing as string theory or anything in physics. You make up an explanation to fit the data and then try to find evidence that works for it.
All right, interesting. Because from seeing like a similar set of data as you, probably, because we have experienced the same world, I did not come to that conclusion. I would really compare it more to something like taste, so like to see how you would differentiate the two.
What? Well, so like for all data, there's like everyone has their own hypothesis. There's usually millions of different hypotheses for the same data.
Sure.
That's not really surprising. So mine is that I think it's caused by an objective thing, which we will be able to discover with different future predictions, which won't come about if it's just evolutionary. Like if morality is purely evolutionary, then species who don't evolve won't have it. So if species who don't evolve do have it, that disproves it's evolutionary and confirms my model, or is evidence towards my model.
I see. I guess then it comes down to what the word morality means. Like if it's just...
I don't think so. I don't think that part's up for debate, because morality, the meaning is irrelevant. What matters is what it corresponds to. So the word morality refers to a particular phenomenon, which is our feelings we get when we see people doing stuff. See someone punch a baby, we feel that's immoral. And so that feeling is what morality is. No one gets, the definitions don't matter. Definitions are garbage. What matters is the phenomenon to which the word refers and what's causing that phenomenon.
Yeah, but that's from a human perspective then. Do you think that animals that evolve, that have different like social structures, they still seem to have something that I'd be fine with calling morality? Like if a pack of dogs or like wolves in the wild has like a set of rules that they abide by.
Right. So yeah, when we use the word morality, we're referring to all of the phenomenon that seem like morality, including for dogs and things too. Yes. So again, the definition doesn't matter. It's what the phenomenon that it refers to. And the phenomenon it refers to is for all the species that we seem to see.
Sure, but like the moral systems that I would call them, where like it's like quite different from species to species. So if we look at ants or other insects like bees, that's quite a different structure you see there, and it doesn't seem to be as precisely on the individual or something. Like it's more like a collective system.
So like if we look at different cultures,
so that doesn't follow the.
If you look at different cultures over time,
path,
there are different versions of mathematics. Some have 0, some do not have 0. Some have prime numbers and square roots, some do not. Some have multiplication and algebra, some do not. Some have calculus, some do not. There are different stages of mathematics, but that doesn't mean mathematics isn't objective. There's still a single system that accurately describes everything. Some people just didn't have the full system at a certain time period. So morality doesn't need to be one system for everyone for it to be objective. If it can affect people in different ways, or their brains are only attuned to it, are able to understand it to some degree. So this is a weird argument people have, that they think morality, for it to be objective, everybody has to agree. Literally makes no difference if everyone agrees. No, it doesn't matter at all. What people think is irrelevant. For morality to be objective, it literally is irrelevant what anybody thinks. That's what it means to be objective.
Yeah, I understand that part. Yeah, I guess I'm interested to see if you ever find evidence for your hypothesis, then, or like enough evidence to convince other people of it. Because right now I don't know if you have that.
Yes, that is. I don't think I do. Kind of like string theory, it doesn't claim to. I imagine when we get
Okay.
AI, it'll start to get a model of morality, and that's when we'll start be leaning more in that direction. But not until then.
So AI would then be the example of something that doesn't evolve.
Yep.
I see.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Yeah, thanks for listening.
Yep.
Talking.
Laser, what is up? I cannot hear you. Try refreshing, leaving and coming back.
Oh, okay. I hope it's better
Yeah,
now.
I can hear you now.
All right, great. So something very weird happened to me today, Thomas, and I would like to get a second opinion on this.
It was
So-
leprechauns.
No leprechauns, but I was trying to make a fire. I took some wood and I put it on fire, and then I accidentally touched the fire and it was cold. And I thought, no, it cannot be. And then I put my whole hand into the fire and it was cold, man. My question to you is: do you have a problem with believing this story?
Well, I'd say that neither I nor you are justified in believing you had that experience. I would say, like, you would be justified in believing you had a delusion, but you would not be justified in believing you actually touched fire and your sensory experience accurately conveyed to you that it was cold. And the reason for this is because we have no empirical data that it can occur, and the vast majority of empirical data shows the opposite case, whereas we have tons and tons of data of people having delusions, hallucinations, illusions, et cetera, et cetera. And so based on the past data we have, you would be rational in concluding you had a delusion. You would be irrational if you concluded you actually touched cold fire.
Man, I thought the same thing. I thought the same thing, and then I put a thermometer in it, like a special device that is like measuring temperature, and it showed that it's minus 25 degrees Celsius.
What you would need to do is you need to take the cold fire to a lab, to a science lab, make testable predictions based off this, have other people confirm those predictions, and then be able to reproduce it so that we can all see it and then experience it. And then you would be justified. None of your personal experiences count. Don't care about any of your personal experiences.
But what about a thermometer?
Nope. Still delusion.
Why is it showed minus 25 degrees Celsius? And then I took another one, a different one, because
None
this
of
was
your
like a
none of
digital
your
one.
personal
I took like
experiences
an
matter.
analog thermometer and I
None
put it
of your
also into
personal
it, and it
experiences
also
matter.
showed minus 25
None
degrees
of your
Celsius.
personal experiences matter. Personal experiences are not evidence of things that don't already have an empirical basis. So if you experience
Okay, so
something,
reading what the thermometer says is personal experience?
yes, literally.
So what's wrong with reading what the instrument shows? What's wrong with that? Are we not doing that in science?
If you do it once, it's not evidence. If you do it, have it repeated by other people all over the world, and they can confirm it, then it's evidence. So you need confirmation by peer review from other people, reproducibility. That's evidence. Personal experience, not evidence. Personal experience is a hypothesis. I think this happened. That's all that is.
No. The thermometer really showed
That's you
minus
think
25 degrees
you
Celsius.
saw a thermometer. That's a hypothesis.
Yes. Well, no, it actually happened.
Okay, it's still a hypothesis. You had an experience, your personal experience, that you think you stuck a thermometer in a fire and it showed a lower temperature. That's fine. I don't care.
What are you even talking about? Are you talking about it? I was hallucinating or what?
That is a possibility.
Man, I was having like a barbecue, bro.
I don't care.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's interesting. I've got a second question, if that's okay.
Okay.
So if you could cut any first lady's hair, which one would it be?
None of them. I don't care. Do you have any other questions?
Okay, all right. No, that's all.
All
Right.
right.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Who's next? Anybody else have any questions? God, philosophy, morality, epistemology, atheist church. Give me money.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey,
So this is gonna be like just a general statement here. Basically, I just need someone to explain how religion is not just a massive cope. I can get into details
What
on
is a
it, but
cope?
I don't know. I just cope, like for instance, like an example would be, well, if your life's getting bad, you probably need to turn to God or something like that, and He can help you through it. That seems like a
It
cope
is a
to
cope.
life
We have
sucking.
scientific evidence that it's a cope. So, like, there's a study done on what was it? People in Lebanon who near a war, and they showed people who prayed to a god felt a more emotional comfort and relief, were able to function better in life than those who didn't. And the closer they were to the war zone, the more pronounced this effect was. Same with wearing like a piece of the Bible around your neck or whatever holy, I don't know, cultish practices you have. They all make you more relaxed. So we have scientific evidence, a ton of scientific evidence that religious beliefs do give people emotional comfort, especially in emotionally distressing situations. So it is.
And then, like, you know how, so people then would be like, well, you can't completely discredit religion just because of that, and
Right.
You're talking about morality and things like that.
So yeah, the fact that it's a cope doesn't prove it's false. It's just it's not evidence it's true either.
That's true. Well, then I'll jump to this point. Do you what's it today in today's society with morality and things like that? Do you think social evolution has skewed people's way of morality with Christianity and
I
religion?
don't know what that means.
Well, I guess like I'm trying to think how to say this here.
Like the way it interprets in my brain is that has social moral progress affected religious beliefs that would cause them to disagree with the original religious practitioners? Yes.
I guess.
So like there's this
I don't know.
new thing called progressive Christianity where they're accepting of people in the LGBT community. That would absolutely be against pretty much every other form of Christianity and Islam anywhere in the past. And so the cultural social values that we're in has affected Christianity and is making it more accepting, and it makes all religions more accepting over time.
Okay. Well, I don't really have anything. I just kind of wanted to pick a brain about that. I don't know.
All right.
Kind of. I mean, I agree with you to begin with, but
Sure. Thanks for coming up.
see what
Thanks
yours
for the
is.
question.
Yep.
Who else? Anybody else got questions, comments, philosophy, morality, religion stuff? Take your prescribed copium. Yes.
Howdy.
Hey,
So, what do you think? So, because your whole morality, so you think lack of imposition of will, like that kind of stuff, is better. So, what do you think would be better? Let me see. How did I end up wording it? Do you think it would be better to be able to fulfill your will, or would it be better to or to have something assist you in fulfilling your will, or would it be better to eliminate something preventing you from executing your will? Which one's better?
well, one of those is. Wait, say that again.
You think they're basically the
Say
same
that
thing?
again.
So like, okay, so let's say that there's two different things, and one can either make it easier for you to fulfill your will, by giving you some greater ability to do so, and then something else, there is something that is preventing you in some way from fulfilling your will, and you can remove that. Which one of those is better?
It would depend.
Or are they just the same?
No, neither one of them. They're neutral. It would depend on the situation. So say I'm playing a video game on hard difficulty, have 1 HP, and I get hit, I die immediately. And you give me infinite HP. You've done an immoral thing. Like, I want to play the video game on hard, and you've made it easier for me. If I didn't want you to make it easier for me, then you've done an immoral thing by giving me an extra ability.
Yeah.
So it's not moral or immoral. It depends on the desire of the individual.
Well, right. So, right. So but in both cases, they're wanting to do something, and they have a very particular goal. One thing is going to make that goal easier, because obviously, if your goal is to play the game on hard difficulty, and hard difficulty does not naturally entail infinite HP, then giving you infinite HP would now make it to where you're no longer playing it on hard difficulty. So that would be an obstacle as opposed
So
to.
the same thing applies to
actually
any case where if you as an individual have set a series of rules and you either want people to be able to interfere with those rules or you do not want people to interfere with those rules. So
Right.
if you want people to be able to interfere with those rules, then it's perfectly moral. If you don't, then it would be immoral. And so it doesn't matter where along the line you interfere with those rules, whether it's they want to play on hard and you give them an HP or not. The deciding factor is if they have set it such that they want to allow people to interfere or not.
Okay. Yeah. So let's say, yeah, and let's say that they do. So let's say that your goal is to get to the top of a mountain, and that's all you care about. You don't care how you get. You don't care how you get there. It's just your goal is to get to the top of a mountain. All right. Now let's say that there's one person, and they're going to build you a staircase up to the top of the mountain, make it twice as easy to get up there. But now let's say that there's another thing, and as you're traveling up, there's a boulder in the way, and this boulder is blocking a particular path, and so you have to go and find a different path, and it's going to make it twice as difficult. So is the building of the staircase equally as good as the boulder is bad? Or is the staircase better, or is the boulder worse?
It's all
what's better?
contingent on the rules the individual has set. So if the individual has said, I don't want any changes to myself, and you give them the ability to fly, that would be immoral. If the individual said, I don't want you to change the terrain, and you change the terrain, that would be immoral. It's all dependent on the values of the individual and what they have set as being appropriate. There's no inherent difference in the examples. It is all completely contingent on the individual, on what they think, what they want.
Okay, so increasing somebody's ability to fulfill their will
is only moral if they want that, and it's immoral if they don't want that.
I'm not saying is not okay. Let's say that they want absolute ability to fulfill their will, and they just don't have it at the moment.
Then it would be moral to
So
give it.
increasing their,
It would be moral to give it to them.
Yeah, I know that's what. Yeah, I know that it would be moral to give it to them. What I'm saying is hold on. How to word this? Is increasing.
It's like you're asking a question of changing the environment versus changing the individual's capabilities or something. It makes no difference. It's all contingent on the individual.
No, that's not what I'm asking at all. Let me see. Okay, so let's say.
So you asked about removing limitations versus added abilities, right? Removing limitations, adding abilities. Those are the two comparisons you're making.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
That is completely contingent on the individual's desires, and there isn't any inherent difference one way or the other. All things being
okay, yeah. So they're just equal. But yeah, that was the question. Do you think that one was better than the other, or are they equal?
And they cannot be equal. There is no inherent values to either one of them. Whether or not any one is good or bad, or whether or not one is better than the other, is completely contingent on the individual, and there is no inherent value to either one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, like I said, if somebody's goal is literally just increasing their ability to exercise their will.
It's like asking what's better to give people, pizza or an apple. It's like, well, it depends on what the person wants. There's no inherent value in pizza that apples don't have.
Well, that's not the type of question that I was asking.
Well, it is. You just don't realize it. So that's exactly the type of question you're asking. You just don't realize it because the value of whether or not you're adding abilities or taking away challenges is equivalent to the value of pizza versus apples. It's subjective to the individual.
Okay, well, I'm saying like this individual, just for the sake of like the question, the individual was just wanting their ability to exercise their will to increase. That's all they were wanting. They don't necessarily care. Like, they don't particularly care what the.
If they don't care more about pizza than apples, then pizza and apples are the exact same to them.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well. All right. Well, that's all I was asking. Like from like your own personal perspective is what I'm saying. Like from your own personal perspective, which one's
from my personal perspective.
So like so. Yeah, from your own personal perspective.
I would not want you messing with my video games, so they'd both be immoral.
Yeah, so they'd be equal, right? Okay. And the reason I asked is I was trying to figure out if there's like some sort of because like let's see what is it? What is it called? Is it utilitarianism? Maybe it is utilitarianism. I don't remember. but maximization of happiness or the elimination of
Hedonism?
unhappiness. Hedonism, maybe, or
happiness doesn't matter in my model. Happiness is irrelevant. Like
no, I know it doesn't matter in your model. That's not what I'm getting at. What's the other one? Not happiness, but
pleasure.
No, there's another term. Well-being. Thank you. Yeah. Well-being. Maximization of well-being. I think that's utilitarianism, right? Maximization of well-being.
Well-being. Utilitarianism can be based off of any number of principles. Like it can be based off of the maximization of life expectancy, well-being, happiness, wealth. Anything can be utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is just maximization of a principle, whatever the principle may be. Well-being is specific to certain models, like Sam Harris's model. It's not really accepted in most of philosophy because it isn't well defined.
Okay. Well, I mean, I agree. It's not terribly well defined as well, but yeah. So like, there's like certain people think that what's better, or are they equally as bad? Is it better to, if you were to be able to quantify well-being and like you would just use wellness points, is it better to add 10 wellness points to somebody who's sitting at 0, or is it better to add 10 wellness points to somebody who's sitting at -10? Even though like or no, somebody's sitting at 0, they have 10 positive, 10 negative, so net 0. So they're sitting at net 0. Is it better to add an additional 10, or is it better to eliminate the -10?
Same thing.
And they would say like, oh yeah, okay. So you would say the same thing. Okay, that's what I was saying. That's what I was asking basically. That's what I was asking.
When I said same thing, I meant same as the previous question about the apples and the pizza. It's completely contingent on the individual.
Okay. Yeah, that's all I was asking.
So like if the individual hates having -10 and removing the -10 would be better than adding 10 because they hate the negative more than they like having the positive, then yeah, it would be.
Well, wouldn't the -10, like if they hate having -10, that would already be factored into the -10. That'd be a part of the -10.
No, not necessarily, because my well-being and desires are completely separate. Like you can desire to have no well-being. Like I don't want it well-being. I want to be not well-being, and that's perfectly fine. You can desire suicide, and that would be literally contradictory to well-being. And so desires and well-being are separate things. And so whether you add up well-being in the point system or not, how your desires relate to those systems is what I think is more important than the well-being numbers.
So yours is like, okay, so yeah, you just want fulfillment of desire. Isn't there already an ideology that states that? What is that? Or a philosophical viewpoint that says like the fulfillment of desires?
Well, that's too vague because that could be implied in like essentially any different ways. Like desire fulfillment doesn't really say anything.
Isn't that egoism?
I don't think so.
I'm pretty sure egoism talks about just the fulfillment.
It's self-interest. So I don't think that has anything to do with desires.
Okay, yeah, maybe it's okay. Yeah, you're right. There's something there though. It's talking about like the fulfillment of personal desires. I guess in this way, like self-interest could be the idea of
well, because like, even with the fulfillment of individual desires, like you could desire to harm someone else, and that could be a fulfillment of desire. So just the fulfillment of desires isn't sufficient and wouldn't be equivalent to mine.
Repeat that.
So fulfillment of desires, like I could desire to harm another human being, and if you simply define fulfillment of desires as moral, then it would be moral for me to harm another human being. And so desire fulfillment is not equivalent to my model because my model is only applied to yourself and your property.
Right. So imposition of
will, yeah,
imposition of will only relative to yourself and your own stuff. Right. Okay. So imposing on somebody's will to impose on somebody else's will
is not immoral.
Is not immoral. Okay. Even though it is itself an imposition of will.
Well, it's not. So will is, you added the second sentence that imposition of will so long as it applies to yourself and your property. The definition of will only applies to yourself and your property in my usage. And so that's just redundant to add the second part. So an imposition of will by definition would only be if it had to do with yourself and your property. So if
Okay.
you had an
So what would
imposition
you-
of,
so what would you-
like your ability to harm somebody else or whatever, that wouldn't be an imposition of your will, because your will only applies to yourself and your property.
Right. So then, what do you call it? What do you call somebody that when? So then, what term would you use if it is relating to someone else and someone else's stuff?
Their will. So it would be third person, second person. Where if you have a desire relating to somebody else's will, then their will is the subjective predicate in the context, and so it would be an imposition of their will, not your will. So it's still an imposition of will, but the context, the will it's referring to, is their will because the context is them.
So hold on. So define will just on its own, just standing alone, not in a sentence, just will. What is it? What are you defining?
Conscious desires, I guess. I don't know.
Huh?
Conscious desires ish.
Well, you can impose. Well, I mean, you can't really. I mean, can you? Well, I mean, if you no, that doesn't work, because then you can if you have a conscious desire to mess with someone else's conscious desires, and then somebody else comes and prevents you from doing that, they are imposing on your will. Like you have a conscious desire.
Nope, because
you're not being
will
allowed
is simply
to do
only
that.
defined as relating to yourself and your property. And so, like, obviously, if I was messing with your ability to have a desire, that would be immoral. I can't, because that would be your will that I'm messing with. But like your ability to enact your will on another person, I can prevent that because that's not your will, that's their will. So you were right that if I was imposing with their ability to have desires, that would be immoral. I can't do that. Can't stop them from having any desires they want, but I can prevent them from enacting those desires on someone else, because it's not an imposition of their will as in their desires. It's a protection of the will of the individual who's the victim.
Well, wouldn't it be both?
No, because again, you can will whatever you want, but you're enacting that on someone else. That's relevant to their will.
Yeah, it's relevant to their will, but it's also relevant to your own will.
Nope, because your will only applies to yourself and your property.
Okay. Well, so yeah. Okay. Well, so then, I guess like the definition of will is not just conscious desires, and that's kind of what I'm saying.
Of yourself and your property.
Conscious desires is more universal.
Well, no, because conscious desires, like, I'm not imposing on your desires. I'm imposing on your ability to enact those desires if it involves another will.
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, but then you would still say, like, okay, you have a desire to do something, and it's with something that belongs to you.
Sure.
And somebody else comes and they stop you from doing that. They're not stopping you from. They're not stopping you from. Yeah, exactly. They're not stopping you from having the desire. They're just stopping you from
Because it's
making the
yourself and your
desire a
property,
reality.
right? Because it's yourself and your property.
Right. Yeah. So that's immoral. But then they're also stopping you from making a desire a reality in the event of where you're trying to impose on somebody else.
Right, because that's not yourself and your property. So again, it only applies to yourself and your property. Your will.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So will,
Yeah.
just the word will is the conscious desire. Your will is specifically related to you, yourself, and your property.
Okay.
So if I'm imposing on will is for anybody, any consciousness, any desire. So if you're trying to impose on somebody else, their will is the thing you're imposing on. So if there's no imposition of will, it means it includes all of the wills. If there's no imposition on your will, that implies to just yourself and your property. Or their will is their self and their property. Will is, again, generally just any consciousness.
Okay. It's just your desire to do with
Yourself and your property. Your desire to do
as you wish with yourself and your
yes.
property. Okay. And how do you whenever you advocate for things in because obviously you have the idea of like the best possible universe and the best possible or the best possible world, best of all possible worlds. Yeah. And in that, it's like, everybody can just do whatever they want so long as it doesn't affect another person.
Yeah.
But then how do you translate that into our universe where that's not the case?
Right now, there is a massive number of involuntary impositions of will, and so we try to reduce that number as much as possible. The best way to do that is by reducing the cost of living, because cost of living is one of the biggest standards that we can use to assess how much your will is being imposed upon. And one of the biggest costs of living is like housing. So if we provide affordable housing, that has a significant reduction on the involuntary imposition of will and moves our world closer to the best of all possible worlds. So reducing the amount of involuntary imposition of will as much as possible moves us closer to that world, and there's a whole bunch to choose from.
Okay. Do you think that... So do you think that so would you think that the elimination of a will is
Subjective. If it wants it,
also an
if
imposition.
it wants it, it's immoral. If it doesn't want it, it's not immoral.
Well, yeah, if it not that it doesn't. The elimination of a will is in and of itself inherently an imposition of will.
If it wants to live, then yes. If it does not want to live, then no.
Okay, yeah. I mean, most people want to live. Not everybody, but most people want to live. So then, what if eliminating that will, in some way, shape, or form, removes impositions of will to some degree on others?
It would be one immoral thing for however many moral things. So like killing one to save 5. If you killed one, which is immoral, and it's never going to not be immoral, and you save 5, which is 5 moral actions. So you've done 1 immoral action and 5 moral actions.
Right. And would you advocate for that? Or would you say no?
Well, I don't advocate for anything. I just say this is the moral mathematics of the situation is you've done 1 immoral thing, which is immoral, and it's always immoral, and it's never good, and you should atone for it. Even if you did infinitely many moral things because you did that moral thing, you should still atone for the bad thing you've done. So if you killed baby Hitler,
how do you atone for it?
I don't know. I don't know. Help
you're saying that you should. Well, you're saying that they ought to atone for it. Well, how do you atone for that?
I don't know.
Like, how do you atone for that?
So, like, if you hurt someone to prevent them from taking ice cream or whatever, then you should give them ice cream. So say there's some guy trying to steal ice cream, and you stop him from stealing ice cream. The moral thing to do would be to buy him ice cream. Like, okay, yeah, I stopped you. It was immoral that I stopped you because I've imposed on your will. So I will buy you ice cream.
No, he's stealing ice cream. Yeah. He's imposing on the will of somebody else to do that. Yeah. Otherwise, it wouldn't be stealing.
Well, suppose it's just ice cream or something.
Yeah. So exactly. Yeah. So it's like what. But okay, so if you were to kill somebody, how do you atone for that?
I have no idea. I don't think you can atone for that, but you should feel guilty and try if you could. You've still done an immoral thing. So the atonement there, what you do to atone doesn't make a difference. There's no such thing as actually changing the fact that it's an immoral action. The point is that you should still acknowledge that you've done an immoral action, and the atonement factor is just an acknowledgement that you've done the immoral action and it is immoral, as opposed to thinking you've done a moral action but you haven't.
Okay.
But there is assumption there that first of all you can feel guilty, that you're healthy enough to feel guilty. Second of all, it's like that you're not desensitized, and third of all, that you don't have a completely different moral system in which you see yourself being justified to do that.
None of that would be relevant to the question, because the question was more from the perspective of my model of morality. What would be the implications of this example? And so other people's models don't matter, and whether or not you believe doesn't matter. You can still know an action is immoral even if you are unable to feel empathy. There are psychopaths and narcissists who know what is moral but just don't care.
Yeah. So okay. So wait. So the atonement. So atonement in whenever you use the word there, like you ought to atone. Like it's what exactly?
It's just an acknowledgement that you've done an immoral action. You acknowledge that you've done something immoral, as opposed to like if you're a police officer and you shoot somebody, and you think you've done a moral action by killing this person, that would be wrong. And saying that you are trying to atone means you acknowledge you've done a wrong thing and you're trying to make up for it. Whether or not you can doesn't make a difference. The point is that you're acknowledging you've done an immoral action. So atonement, or saying you should atone, is the acknowledgement that you've done an immoral thing.
Right. I mean, wouldn't you say that like atonement, as it's commonly used, it's not just recognition that you've done something wrong, but then it's also like an action of like there's like it has to follow up with some sort of action.
Presumably, like there are many cases where you can atone, like if you stop someone from stealing ice cream and you buy them ice cream, you can atone for that. If you kill someone, I don't know if you can atone for killing someone. That doesn't sound possible to me. So whether or not you can actually achieve atonement and the attempt for atonement are two separate things.
Right. But yeah, okay, so like let's again to come back to like you say you don't advocate for anything. I don't think that's true. I'm sure you advocate for
give
a lot
me
of
money
things.
and hot blondes. That's what I advocate for.
Give you money and what?
Hot blondes, Instagram models.
Yeah. Blondes, no redheads.
No, not really. I think I've seen one attractive redhead, maybe.
One, as like a unique thing. Spice it up every now and then. Mix it up, but like, I mean, surely you advocate, you think lawmakers ought pass X bill or something. I'm sure you advocate for that thing. I mean, you were just talking about affordable housing, but like in order to do affordable housing, like we would have to do X, Y, Z.
Well, so
thing,
like
right?
there's a difference between a model of morality, which there are no oughts in, and my personal desires, which there are tons of oughts in. You ought give me money right now, all of it, just all of your money. You ought give me money. And so if you're asking from my personal subjective perspective, do I think people ought do stuff? Yeah, of course. Does my model of morality entail oughts? No.
I mean, how does it not?
You don't need them. Like oughts don't do anything. It's a factual statement. This is moral. This is immoral. What you ought to do, I don't care. So like, I think oughts are hypothetical imperatives, not categorical. So if you want to be immoral, then you ought to do immoral things. I don't think there's some kind of categorical ought there that's relevant. Oughts don't matter.
Is it moral if you, let's say, you do moral action, but for a, you would say, a selfish reason or something like that?
Yep, still moral.
So, yeah,
So you believe in objective morality?
Yes.
Yes, he does, and he doesn't think that motivation or like intent has any bearing on it whatsoever. It's just the action itself.
Yep.
And in fact, it doesn't even have to necessarily be an action. He thinks that inanimate things can behave.
But it would still be an action. So it does have to be an action.
How can you know that there is
an
like
action.
objective
Well, no,
morality?
for something that's like for it to be called an action, at least the way that I'm using it, it would require some sort of intent.
Okay, so yeah,
Or
I'm
not
using
necessarily
action more in the physical sense with some interaction kind of a thing. If like a rock falls on you, that would be an
Interaction, yeah.
action. Whereas like if you have a desire to harm somebody or an intention to harm somebody, but you never do, you've never done an immoral action.
Okay, well, let's say because we're talking about action. I mean, let's say I'm traveling through space in a straight line, and my entire goal is literally just I want to travel through space in a straight line with no blockages whatsoever. And then suddenly, boom, there's a rock. There's like an asteroid in my way, but it's just like floating there. Like it's not actually doing anything. It's just existing. Like that's not. Would you call that an action?
Yes.
Like
So
existing is an action.
each action has an equal yet opposite reaction. So yeah, it's physically that would be an action.
Just existing.
Well, there was a force transfer between you and the rock. That was the action. Each action has an equal yet opposite reaction.
No. I haven't like touched it yet.
What?
I'm just traveling forward, right?
Oh,
Like
okay.
it's, but I see that it's in my way, and I don't want it to be in my way, right? And like maybe if it's in my way, I could choose to stop, right? I don't have to come into contact with it. But it's like you wouldn't call that an action. It's just existing.
Right, it
It's not
hasn't
doing
actually
anything.
done anything to you yet. It hasn't done anything. There's no action that's taken place.
Right. But it's existing in front of me, and I don't want it to exist in front of me. But it's also not. It's not another being, right? I can't. It doesn't have its own will. It just is. It's just floating there.
If you literally just don't want the rock to be in front of you or something, and the rock does.
Yeah, I don't want it to exist in front of. I don't want it to. I don't want it to enter into my field of view. Okay. But because I'm traveling where I am, and it happens to be towards
so there's still an energy
view.
transfer. There's the photons that hit the object and then hit your eyes and then cause your brain to see there's a rock. That's an action. That's a physical action.
Okay, but then it's those photons are what's causing it to enter my view. What if the photons weren't there and I just didn't see it? But then it's like it's still in my way, right? Yeah. And I don't want it in my way. I don't want it. Let's say that I start traveling in a straight line, right? And I don't want anything to exist on that line for an infinite amount of space, and that the rock just happens to exist there. And it existed there before I chose to go in that direction, right? And it's going to exist there as I go in that direction. But there was no conscious decision for it to get in my way.
Yeah, I'd say that the situation of the universe in that case means the universe was immoral, and whatever took place in order to set up the universe in that way would have been the immoral action that led to this situation.
Right, but that rock is not. Yeah,
the rock itself simply being in front of you wouldn't be an action, but whatever caused the universe to be in such a way that could allow the immoral occurrence to take place would be an action. So the immoral action would be the design of the universe, essentially, that allowed this.
Do you think coming into like spontaneous what is it? Spontaneously coming into existence, is that an action?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, what's doing the
I have
action
no
then? I mean,
idea.
like
I don't know. Well, there's clearly something that's occurring in reality, and so anything occurring in reality, I'd say, is an action. Even if it's uncaused, but like a brute fact, an action still took place, even if it was an uncaused action.
We're saying within reality, like reality coming into being. I guess I don't know how. I don't know like how this.
Well, that's like a
one would
thing that actually
phrase it.
happens in quantum physics. So
Yeah, so like reality itself coming into being, like the universe coming into being.
if it happens,
not
that
nothing's
would be an action.
That's an action. You would call that an action?
Yeah, if something came from nothing, then that the something existence would be an action of some kind.
I don't know. I don't know if I would call that an action, because especially if it's like just not doing anything other than existing, right?
Well, yeah, like if there was like imagine the Big Bang was literally something from nothing. It's not, but say the theists were right for a second, and literally the Big Bang just came from a literal nothing. The Big Bang would be an action. It's still an action, a thing popped into existence from nothing.
Right, but it's an action because it's like it's doing so. It's expanding.
No, suppose it's not. It just magically everything appeared as is, and nothing else was happening. Like frozen in a single,
and nothing
like
moved.
a single moment of time just appeared or something. There was still an action there. The time was not there, and then the time was there. There was an action. Reality changed. Something happened.
Yeah. Okay. That's. I don't know. That's just an interesting use of the word action there.
Every action has
It's
an
funny.
equal yet opposite reactions. That's the definition. That's the musing. Action.
What's the opposite, equal and opposite reaction to
something
coming into
something
existence?
coming from nothing? That's a violation of the second law of thermodynamics. So it wouldn't be, but suppose it was possible, it'd still be an action.
Well, what about the second law of thermodynamics coming into existence? What if
That would be an action
what's
too.
the opposite? Well, what's the reaction to that?
Oh, no. So I'm just using the definition of action as used in physics. And if you're saying physics is wrong about the law, the definition of action would still be applicable. So the definition of action isn't the second law. The second law just uses the word action and has a definition. So the second law could still be wrong, but I can still use the definition of action being used in the second law just fine.
Okay. So if okay, so then hold on. So if something came from nothing, how is that an action if it violates the law that dictates what an action is?
No, the law doesn't define action. The law uses
define
action. So like the sentence,
okay,
every action is an equal yet opposite reaction, isn't the definition of what an action is. It's just using
okay. So
action.
what's the so an action does not necessarily have to have a reaction, right?
No, there's no logical intent
Okay.
there. So the definition of action in physics is just like any energy transfer or something.
It's an energy transfer.
Something like that.
Well, energy coming into existence would not be an energy transfer, though.
Sure, if energy exists, then it was existing and non-existing. That's a transfer from it not existing to it existing. So it would still be an energy transfer. We just have to consider the non-existence like a field.
I don't think you can transfer from non-existence. Non-existence is like it's non-existence. I don't think you can transfer from it anything because there's nothing. It's literally nothingness. I don't know that like definitionally works, or not definitionally. I don't know that works.
No, because transfer can mean having one state or moving to a different state. Just moving to a different state is a transfer. And so if the state is non-existence and you move to a state of existence, that's still a transfer, even though it doesn't apply logically from like there was an existing thing to a non-existent thing. It's still transfer, state transfer.
Okay. That was fun though.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm gonna give it a rest for just a minute. I'll just listen for. But
sounds good. Who is next? Hello, Dirt. You are muted. Not server muted though.
Hey, I think I'm off mute.
Okay.
Hey, so a question on that thread, as you guys are talking about the example of an imposition of will, and then saying how that applies even to inanimate objects. And I just want to ask like an example that was where there is actually not an action at all. Like what if I just don't like irrational numbers and I want pi to be a rational number?
Then it would be
you say,
immoral
like-
for in your universe for pi to be an irrational number. You just change it to 3.
So the universe would be immoral for
Yes.
letting it be irrational in the first
Yes.
place.
So if in your universe you don't like irrational numbers, then it would be impossible for irrational numbers to exist in your universe.
Okay. And then do you consider it like equal moral resolution for like the universe to change or for me to change? So like either the universe could change and say, okay, pi is 3, or I could start to be happy with irrational numbers. Do you consider those to be equally valid ways of increasing the morality?
If you want to change and you change, it would be equally moral.
But what if I don't want to change and I just happen to change?
Well, like if you actively don't want to change and something causes you to change, that would be immoral. If you don't care and you happen to change, it's not.
Okay. But it's not an imposition of will because nothing like imposed its will on me. I was neutral to the fact that it changed.
Right. So you'd have to positively not want to change, and then you were changed by something. That would be an imposition of your will. If you don't care, then it doesn't make a difference. It wouldn't be an imposition of will if you don't care, because you don't will it one way or the other.
Okay. I guess what I'm trying to understand is like in like religious framings, you have like the serenity prayer, which is like, help me figure out how to accept what I can't change and also change the things I can. And that seems to frame it as like both of those are a valid way to get to a more moral resolution. And I was wondering if you can sort of comment on whether you see like generally the pathway to morality as like the universe becoming more acceptable to people versus also sort of like placing a kind of meta responsibility on like how people want things.
Yeah, I would definitely not place any responsibility on how people want things. I don't think it's our responsibility to stop wanting things in order to try to make the universe more moral simply by not caring that it's doing things we don't like. So I think that it would be like if we just say we gave everyone a drug that they just stopped being able to care about anything, that would eliminate all immoral action because no one would care. Literally don't care about anything. We'd all just be essentially emotionally dead. Would that be better or worse? Probably worse. It'd be a worse universe, I think. And so simply eliminating desires, while it would stop things being immoral, wouldn't make the world better. It would make it worse. So we still need to have desires, whatever the desires may be. And then the desire fulfillment aspect is what makes something moral. Simply lacking desires would just make things amoral. Everything would just be amoral. So you need to have the desires and then the ability to fulfill those desires. And simply eliminating desires of certain kinds wouldn't make things more moral. It would just make things more amoral, more rockish.
Oh wait, so there's 3 categories. There's amoral and moral and immoral.
Yeah, immoral is good, immoral bad, amoral is neither.
Okay. So eliminating all desires doesn't make things more moral. It makes things more amoral, but also makes things, in your view, worse.
Yes. So if there's less good, that means that the number is closer to 0. Good is a positive number, and so if you go closer to 0, it means there's less of the positive number.
Okay.
Also less of the negative number. But what I want no negative number and all positive number. That's the one I think is the good one. The 0 has no negative, but also has no positive. My model has all positive and no negative. So it would be better to have my model with desires and desire fulfillment rather than eliminating desires, which would be 0.
Okay. So then I guess then in general, efforts to change what you want, like through like cognitive behavioral therapy or like meditation, like in Buddhism, are not things that you would see as making the world better.
if you want to change, it's perfectly moral to do that. But if you don't want to change, then yeah, doing those things doesn't make the world better.
Okay. Okay, so it's okay. So it's far more acceptable and desirable to you if you want to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to change and then you get to change, that's moral. That's a good thing.
I see. Okay, yeah, but like having that be forced on people with like a drug or something would be bad.
Right. So like taking the two options of, let's say we have a drug addict or two drug addicts, and one go to Buddhism and try to change the desires he has to eliminate desire. Whereas in my world, what we do is just eliminate all of the damage the drug does, and they can still take as much of the drug as they want. It's like, here you go, have fun, take as much heroin as you want. We'll get rid of all the pain and suffering and cost associated with it. And then you can just decide to stop whenever you want. That would be a more moral world than forcing them to go through some kind of existential change so they can't do drugs anymore. They don't desire to do drugs anymore.
Okay. But it could theoretically be more moral if the amount of coercion is small in relation to the amount of desire they give up. So like if you give someone a drug, if like you gave someone a drug just as a one-time thing that for the rest of their life alleviated their desires, that would actually be a net increase in morality, I think, in your view, because the imposition was small.
Sort of. So it would be a net increase, but an immoral action still took place. Whereas the thing that I think is more moral is the one where no immoral actions take place. So I want no negatives, zero negatives. I don't care how small the negatives. I want no negatives. So if you have an option of giving someone a pill that they are no longer addicted, or just eliminating all negative consequences of a drug altogether and letting them have as much of the drug as they want, that option is more moral than the one that you were imposing even a tiny negative of making them take a drug without their consent.
Okay.
Here's a question. Okay. Because you said earlier that stopping somebody from imposing on someone else's will is not bad. It's good. It's also not an imposition of their will. What if you know that person A is going to impose on person B's will, but you can't directly stop them from doing that unless you, at some earlier point in time, impose on person A's will? So like, let's say like person
one immoral action to then do moral action. So it would just be like trolley problem.
It would be trolley problem. You think it would be trolley problem?
Yeah. So like if you have to do one bad thing to prevent a different bad thing, you've trolley problem.
Okay. So even if you know, like, okay, so even if you know that they're going to impose on 1,000 people's will 1,000 times each, imposing on their will even once, that's still
It's a little moral action
to prevent that from happening. That's still okay.
It's trolley problem. Okay. Kill one, save 5. You've done one bad thing, 5 good things.
Okay, so now what if you know for a fact, like, just how everything is, with no exception, that the only possible existence that there could ever be is that you either have to impose upon their will to prevent all those.
Then that world would be immoral and would not be the best of all possible worlds.
What if that is the only possible world?
It's not. It's literally logically not the only possible world.
But what if it was?
Then there would have to be a logical contradiction in every other way it could be.
Okay. Okay. All right. So if there's a big red button in front of you and you could press it and it would destroy all life, and so now there was no longer any impositions of will.
That would include me. That would be a problem.
Yeah, it would include. Yeah, it would include you, but then also your will would never be imposed again.
Yes, but that's like the example he used before. I could eliminate all positives and all negatives. That gives us an amoral world. Doesn't make it a moral world. I want a perfectly moral world.
Right, but the world's already amoral. Impositions of will have already taken place. The worlds are, and they're going to continue.
That's not amoral. Amoral is no negatives, no positives. The world is a mixture of both moral and immoral. And
immoral. Okay, the world will become. Sure, the world might become
amoral.
Right. But then like.
So,
But is an amoral world better, worse, or equal to an immoral world?
Since there are already conscious beings existing who want to continue existing, to create an amoral world would be immoral. It would be immoral to do that. So if you're asking
Right,
from
would-
like
would you
a
say-
neutral standpoint of which one would be better to create from nothing, amoral would be less bad than moral if you're going to create from nothing.
Right. But like the universe as it is, it's already immoral, right?
Yeah, it's a combination of both moral and immoral and amoral.
Okay, but it's okay. So it's a combination of both amoral and immoral. Do you think it leans one way or the other?
Maybe, probably.
Which one do you think it leans towards?
Probably.
Or probably
Let's
leans
suppose it leans immoral for the sake of the argument.
towards? Okay. So you don't think like bringing both positive and negative down to zero, like the elimination of. So okay, so you don't. So let's say that there's like 1 point positive and 1,000 points negative, bringing both down to zero.
Trolley problem. Still doing one bad thing to do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And so you still would not advocate for that,
Right,
even
you've
if
still
like,
done an immoral action. That's still bad. You have not made the world the best of all possible worlds. What you should do is make the world the best of all possible worlds.
like you wouldn't. So let's say that you can't make the best of all possible worlds. Let's say you can't do it. Let's say that the best of all possible worlds, like it exists as a concept, but it's not possible for us within this universe to make it a reality. And the only two options are to continue existing as we are, and possibly get even worse, or reset the universe to zero.
Well, in that case, what we should do is we should
which
continue
one?
developing science to try to reduce as many impositions as possible and do as many helping things as possible, which is literally what we're doing now. That is the best option. Like if your options are literally only suffering or only amoral rock world, I think that should be left up to the individuals to choose.
Right. And what do you think? Which one do you specifically think?
If I had an option
as-
of only of death or suffering permanently or just only suffering, I'd pick death 100%.
Okay. So I like the way you put it. Just empty rock world. I like that. It doesn't have to be a rock world. Maybe there's an ocean still. You still get like waves and stuff, right? And trees.
Yes, unless those trees
know,
have
there's still no
desires,
way.
they're amoral.
Yeah, exactly. Those trees don't have desires. But it's like, would you rather a rock world or would you rather like
I would rather a pizza
with
world,
trees and-
a potato,
Pizza
maybe
world.
a pineapple world. Waterworld was a terrible
okay.
movie, so I would not advocate.
I don't know. I feel like it probably wasn't that bad. I feel like it couldn't have been that bad.
You should watch it first.
In fact, I think the worst thing about that movie is the fact that like all of the oil was still usable after like years and years. It's just inaccurate. It's not how oil works. It goes bad.
No, it doesn't. It becomes less.
Yeah, no,
it's less efficient.
Unrefined.
Well,
like
even
unrefined.
unrefined, it's still usable. It's just less efficient.
No. I'm saying like I'm saying the unrefined stuff, like the stuff straight out of the ground is fine, but like once you process it, like that shit goes bad.
No, it'll still be usable. It'll be less efficient. It has less efficiency.
No,
but it's still
no.
usable.
If you put gasoline, if you put gasoline, let's say you improperly store gasoline and you leave it in there for like 10 years, like
it'll still run.
It's gonna be.
It'll still run.
Fucking useless. Dude.
No, still run.
No.
It'll run less efficiently, but it'll still run.
Nah.
Yep.
I don't know. I have to check that one out. All right. Anyways, I kind of jumped in on that guy, but it sounded like he was done anyways.
All right. Let's see who's next. Hello, NSNG.
So I was gonna ask something very similar. If you had two buttons and one would eliminate the cause of will, because you agree what will is cause, right?
Eliminate the cause of will?
You agree that will is caused, right?
I guess.
So you could eliminate the causes of every will. But basically it would lead to the amoral world.
Well, no. So like will is caused by biology as far as I know. evolution of some kind. So even if we eliminated the cause of will, we could still exist. So we could like just eliminate all biology and still logically exist in some conscious state. And so eliminating the cause of will wouldn't mean eliminating all wills necessarily.
Okay, not necessarily, but let's just say you can press a magic button and there's this amoral world with no will.
Yeah.
Or you press a button which guarantees one imposition on will. So would you prefer the second button?
I would need more information. So like if I can choose between creating two worlds from scratch, from nothing, and one world has just there's only amoral things, and one world has just one immoral action and no moral actions, depending on, I would leave it up to the individual in the world to decide. Like if I'm going to put Bob in this world and have him get a paper cut, he gets to decide whether he wants to live in that world with the paper cut or not. And if there's lots of positive things in addition to that immoral thing, he probably would pick to live there. But if it's just like literally he gets a paper cut and just eternity of nothing else but just the paper cut happens to him, versus a world of nothing, it's still up to Bob. I would let Bob decide what he would want to pick.
Okay, so but if you were to have the option between the buttons now, you would say the number of impositions would have to outnumber the moral things that are happening in this world.
No, I would not. The number is irrelevant. So it's up to the individual. So what makes it morally significant is the individuals who are going to be placed in the world, what they want. So if they want to live in a world of just immoral actions, that's perfectly fine. They can do that. And then they stop being immoral. So like if someone consented to be in a part of a world where they just get tortured all the time, then it's not immoral to torture them because they've consented to the interaction. And so whether or not the number of immoral actions that take place are irrelevant to the whether or not the beings in those worlds consent to those kinds of being in those worlds. Anybody else? Questions, comments, philosophy, politics, atheist church? Give me money.
What if I want
To give me money?
A to equal A? Yeah. What if I want to give you money?
Yes.
What if I want A to equal A, but A to also not equal A at the same time?
You get a paraconsistent universe.
You know what?
Paraconsistent logic is a logic that has actual contradictions in it. So you can have a universe that has actual contradictions in it.
Okay, what if I don't want it to be paraconsistent?
You can have it be dialetheistic. I don't care.
But I don't want it to be paraconsistent, but I also want A to equal A to not equal A at the same time.
You can have that. You can have that universe, and whatever it's called, you get to name it. It's your own new thing. It's yours.
Awesome, wonderful.
Call it the potato pineapple universe.
That's all I want. That's my only desire.
You get that universe, I get the Instagram model universe, everybody's happy.
And what is with contradictions? So if I want chocolate ice cream and not chocolate ice cream at tea, then what? Is it then moral to give me chocolate ice cream, or is it both immoral and moral?
Well, morality has to do with other people interacting in your universe. So like that would be dependent upon how you set up the rules in your paraconsistent logical universe. So if you set up the rules in your paraconsistent logical universe that a logical being in a logical universe could give you logical ice cream and that was moral, then it would be moral. If you said it was immoral, then it would be immoral. If you said that any logical being interacting in your universe in a logical way was immoral, then they couldn't do it.
No, I mean, like right now, you don't think a person can have two wills that are contradictory?
No. If there can be two wills in one brain that can contradict, but those are two different wills.
Yes. And if they contradict, then
it's
if I do
one of them is being subjected to involuntary imposition of will, which is immoral, and we should try to separate the will from the brain if we could. That would be the moral action.
So do you, as you exist like right now, do you think that your arm is like a part of you, or do you think that it's like it's you are something separate from your physical form, and like it just happens that you have control over that arm?
It's more like roses and flowers. All roses are flowers, or but not all flowers are roses. And so, depending on the context of you, the minimum necessary context for you is a conscious state. Whatever causes that conscious state is irrelevant. And so, if you're using you in the most specific sense, all you need is your consciousness. Normally, when we use the word you, we use it in the more general sense, like flowers, and that which includes the extensions of your own body, which include your arms typically.
Okay, so you'd say like your arm is not like necessarily you.
If you cut my arm off, I'm still me.
Okay. So
still my property though. My arm is definitely my property.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, so what if your property is imposing on your will, even though it's a part of your will, right?
That would be immoral.
Okay. So then would it still? So then it would no longer be a part of your will, or it would
still be.
It would cease to be a part of your will, or it would still be a part of your will.
Well, so involuntary imposition of will is imposing on your desires relating to your property. So if you have a desire relating to your property that it doesn't poke you in the eye, and your back scratcher pokes you in the eye, then your back scratcher has done there's an immoral action that has taken place. That is still your will, it's still your property. None of that would change. The problem is whatever this situation that set up the universe would be has allowed immoral actions to take place where things within your property can impose on your will.
Right. Okay. So the universe, what if the universe is set up in such a way that like your consciousness exists and whatnot? But you're just kind of like just there, and like the limits of the universe, like all of the limits of the universe is just enough to fit your consciousness in it and nothing else. Is that an immoral universe?
If your consciousness wants more in it, then yes.
Okay. What if what if what's the word?
Potato.
Those people that think like
solipsism.
Solipsism. What if like you're a solipsist and like you're the universe is your consciousness and your consciousness is the universe, but then like it seems like your will is being violated, but you're not really. Maybe it's not actually.
What?
Yeah, right. It's like solipsists. They believe like
Yes, they are everything.
Mind.
They're the only thing that exists. Right.
Right. So like if they're the only thing that exists, then they can still they're imagining, I guess, that they're walking down the road and they're imagining, I guess, the person coming up to them and pulling out a knife and robbing them, right? But
yeah, if they don't want to be robbed, it's still immoral.
Well, that's the thing, but it appears that they don't want to be robbed, and it appears like an imposition of will is happening. But if the entire universe is their consciousness and or their mind,
well, how would it appear? Like if they have the desire that they don't want to be robbed, that can't just like appear that they don't want to be robbed. That's a fundamental part of it.
Do they actually have the desire that they don't want to be robbed, or do they? Okay, so think about it like this. Like, let's say so let's say you imagine in your mind two characters, and one character is robbing the other character, and the other character doesn't want to be robbed. It's like that those two characters, like nothing. Right. There's no actual imposition of will there because you're just imagining them, right? Yeah.
But solipsism, you're not character in the universe. You are the universe. Your consciousness is the universe.
Right, but then like the thing that you seem like you are, like the in your body, because like even though you're a solipsist and you have a not you specifically, but like in this example, even though the person is a solipsist, their perceptions are still just within that physical, what appears to be a physical form and in that body. Those are just what they're perceiving, but the totality of what they are is so much greater than that. So, but like that body that they're in and the perceptions that they're having, that aspect of them seems like its will is being violated. But then obviously the greater thing that they are, the universe as a whole, the other seeming beings in it.
So if they have a desire that they don't want to have a certain experience, Whether or not that experience is physical or not doesn't make a difference. So if they don't want to have the experience of being stabbed and robbed or whatever, and it appears as if they're getting stabbed and robbed, that's immoral. It's the experience is happening is the thing they don't want to happen, regardless of whether or not it's physical or mental.
Hmm. I don't know. What if they? Do you think that somebody can like think that they want something, but then they don't actually want it, or do you think like if they believe that they want it, then they do actually want it?
Typically, if they desire they want it, then yes, they actually do want it. What they usually don't want is some unforeseen consequences or something, but those are immoral anyway. So yes, I'd say if you have a desire for it, you by definition want it.
Okay. Wait, so then if in a solipsistic universe, wouldn't they want the experience? Wouldn't they necessarily have to? I mean, I guess I would say no, they don't. But from your point of view and your understanding of solipsism, like, wouldn't they necessarily have to want to experience getting robbed in order for that to even take place in the first place?
If they were in the best of all possible worlds, yes. But if they're just a solipsist, no. You can be a solipsist and experience anything essentially. Your desires have no part in it. Like you being the only thing that exists doesn't mean you control everything that exists.
So you cannot control yourself,
right? So like if
as
a solipsist, you can exist and just be subject to whatever is going on in your brain.
Not necessarily your brain, because your brain doesn't necessarily exist in a solipsistic world, but it's just
whatever,
like it's all just
your
consciousness and imagination.
So yeah, just being the only thing that exists doesn't mean you have control over everything.
So what if like what if it's some sort of like hive mind solipsism, and like every single person that's having a perception and experience, they're all the same being. You know, it's like, you know, it's like the Trinity. You know, they all three separate beings that are also all the same being at the same time.
Yes, it is like a contradiction.
Yeah, but instead of the Trinity, it's the 7 billion T.
So you're a solipsist and you think you're the only thing that exists, and there are 7 billion of you and you all think you're the only thing that exists, and in reality you're all actually just one big mind and you don't know it yet.
Yeah.
So like panpsychism, idealism.
Sure,
that's possible. It's just idealism.
Yeah, and then like and then one aspect of yourself goes and mugs another aspect of yourself. Like, did you want that or did you not want that? Because one, I don't know, like what is it? And they're equal parts of you, right?
Yeah. So if they're both you and you both desire them, then you've done a moral thing and an immoral thing to yourself.
Both a moral and immoral thing?
Yeah. So if you have two consciousnesses that are having two contradictory desires at the same thing, but they're both you and they're both your property, then you've both done an immoral thing and a moral thing at the same time.
Okay, cool. All right. There we go. Glad we cleared that one up. That was a pressing issue.
Yep, definitely. It's going to be one of the things that AI is just going to ponder about for ages. Hello, Shadow.
Hey, TJump. God, I was hoping it was not that soon. I would love to discuss the electric universe, and you are going to get paid $20 for this.
Sure. Sounds good.
I love your channel, and I love watching your videos.
Thanks. Yeah, well, we've known each other for a while. You were on my Discord for forever.
I don't think we interacted that much. Yeah, I was on your Discord.
I don't really interact with many people on my Discord though, so
I don't interact with people. It's fine. I'm a little nervous about this, but so I believe in the electric universe theory as the alternate model for what our current model believes. And I, as an individual, like to explore my own personal beliefs and study. And I also like to match it to the observable reality. And my question is, have you ever encountered someone or debated someone who believes in the electric universe?
Yes, Professor Dave does an amazing video on debunking the electric universe.
Oh, I've seen his videos. I don't agree with what the current electric universe other people model things because I watched Professor Dave's videos. He mentioned something about electric universe disproving Newtonian's model, but actually, as myself, as a personal thing, I do believe in Einstein's
General
no,
relativity.
not Einstein's. I'm sorry. No, not relativity. My words came out wrong. I do believe in Newtonian's model.
Okay.
So I don't generally like to.
So you reject general relativity.
Yes.
Why?
Because I'm stubborn. So I guess I'll explain my model and then we can go over like a little few facts here.
Okay.
The electric universe, my model states that the gravity in celestial object is all affected by some form of electricity and magnetism. And there's a process of law of science that we have still yet to learn and explore in order to explain this phenomenon.
Okay.
And this model has to do with space being like shining light through all objects. Our eyes tend to filter the light, so we don't generally see it. But
say that again.
Light.
Space.
Light.
Space filter.
Oh, objects.
Space filters light through all objects. Is that what you said?
No, our eyes. Our eyes filter.
Okay. So our eyes see light. I agree.
But it also filters some light because realistically we don't see everything in what we observe in our observable reality. Like everything is like when you observe like fog from a distance, everything is lit up, but our eyes does a good job filtering that. Anyway, whatever. And objects that involve plasma produces these lights and effects, and these I get. Yes.
Plasma, like the form of matter that is when gases are so hot that the electrons can't stay with the protons and neutrons. Is that plasma?
Yeah. I would. Yeah.
What does that? What does that do? What does it have to do with light?
I propose light. Let's talk about specific ones. I wrote things down. So I wrote down that every planet has or at least bigger celestial objects. Maybe you argue that our moon does not contain a magnetic field. The Earth, Mercury, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, and Mars, even though Mars was thought to be contain that. And do you have any questions?
I don't understand your model yet. So, general and special relativity made very successful novel predictions. My standard for saying that something is true is if it can make novel predictions. Does your model make any novel predictions?
No, because it hasn't been investigated.
Well, you can make novel predictions without being investigated. Like you can predict that the Ronald McDonald man will grow to be 50 feet tall and conquer the world in 7 days. That's a prediction. It doesn't matter if it's been tested. You can make predictions about anything. So predictions are like.
Well, let's.
What?
Go ahead.
So predictions are just, if your model is true, here is something we would expect to see in the future we haven't seen yet.
I believe it can make predictions, but I don't know much to be able to describe like the details of the model, and I'm still having a hard time speaking about this. But
well, so my first interpretation is that anybody can make up a hypothesis of anything they want. That's fine. And then yours sounds
Yeah, I
like a
get that.
hypothesis.
But whatever matches to the observable reality is yeah, I agree.
Right. So then you would have to say, for your model to be rational,
that-
you would have to make testable predictions that you would then expect to be discovered in the future that differentiate it from the current models. Because Einstein did that. Einstein got him right. So his model wins, essentially.
I get that. And if in order for my model to be true, I have to observe the reality and hypotheses and make predictions and test those. And if they hold true, then we can go further and build upon that model. Unfortunately, I don't I don't have much of that to be able to say much of anything. So in that part, I agree.
So
The only
why
thing
do
I
you
can
believe
do
that the electric universe model is correct prior to having any novel predictions? Are you still there? I can't hear you.
No, I'm still
Gotcha.
here. I'm thinking about that. Yeah, very good question. I just suspect it to be true, I guess. I don't really know how to answer that. This is like a very hard topic in general to study, because I have to still learn a lot of physics to be able to describe it, and over time, I believe I will.
Okay.
So there's still a lot for me to learn.
Sure. So do you agree that Einstein made novel predictions about things he didn't know yet and got them right, a bunch of them?
I believe that Einstein makes the predictions. What can you describe those
Sure.
predictions?
So Einstein predicted that if his model is correct, he would be able to measure a curvature of light around the sun. He then did the experiment, measured the curvature of light. He was right. He predicted that you'd be able to measure gravitational waves. LIGO experiment accurately measured the gravitational waves. He predicted the difference in speed or the difference in time when traveling at a high altitude versus a low altitude. That was tested in the two planes with the atomic clocks. That was confirmed. He made predictions of black holes. Black holes were confirmed. Those are the ones I remember off the top of my head.
Okay, kind of believe I jumped the bandwagon when I engaged with it, but and is all this Einstein's model based on the curvature of space-time?
Some of it is.
Some of it is.
So like his light speed predictions aren't based on the curvature of space-time because that's special relativity, which is irrelevant to the curvature. So there's two different models there, special relativity and general relativity. But a lot of them, like the curvature of light around the sun, that's based on the curvature of space-time model. Gravitational waves is based on the curvature of space-time model. Black holes, I think, is. So a lot of it have been predictions made based off of the curvature of space-time model, yes.
Okay.
So that's why I accept general and special relativity, because Einstein made them. He made predictions that were unique to his model, that if they were true, we'd discover these things. Then we discovered those, and we kept discovering them. And the most recent ones were like in the past 20 years, we discovered the gravitational waves.
And the gravitational waves that has to do with the. Does the wave has to do with the ripples of space-time?
Yeah.
Oh, with the LIGO?
Yeah.
How does that relate to the laser beam shining a beam of mirrors across distances?
So LIGO shoots two laser beams that are extremely accurate into a mirror, and the laser beams are I forget what it's called, where they have the waves pointed exactly proportional to one another, so they cancel each other out. And if there's any bending where it increases the length of one side to another, then the waves will not be perfectly aligned anymore, and so they will have a different wavelength or interval than they normally do, which you can then measure how much that is to know how much the curvature was. And if you don't get any signal, then that means there was no bending, because if it's perfectly aligned, then the waves are going to cancel each other out. You're going to get nothing. And so that's how they measure gravitational waves, based off of the amount that the wavelengths change going forward and back across the spectrum of lasers.
Okay. So if I were to like, if my model is true or whatever model is true, I have to make predictions that explains the well, the mercury, the change of perihelion or mercury is one of them.
Well, I don't think you have to make predictions about those things. Those things have already been explained. What you need to do is explain all of those things and then make a new prediction of a new thing.
A new thing.
Yeah, so a new thing that Einstein's model doesn't predict, you would have to predict it and then discover it. And if you were right, that would be evidence of your model over Einstein's model because his didn't predict it.
I think I disagree with that. I think I think it helps to make predictions of the things that Einstein already predicted, because I don't believe in Einstein. So
Well,
because I'm going like
that's post hoc
completely-
rationalization. So after we already know something, being able to take that thing and fit it into a model is easy. Anybody can do that. It's called the problem of underdetermination. There are infinitely many models that can explain all of the data. So anybody can take all of the data and make it fit into their preferred model. That doesn't matter. No one cares about that. What they care about is the ability to predict new things we don't know yet, because that's very hard. It's really, really easy to take all of the old data and make it fit your model. So I can like say the entire universe was...
But I need to build upon the model. That's the thing.
Yeah. So to build upon the model, you got to predict something new that we don't know yet, that we haven't seen yet, because that's very hard.
Okay. Okay. As opposed to the perihelium, the mycosamorin, and the LIGO experiment, I have to be able to predict something new with my model, which I have to develop, which is fucking tough. Because I said I did jump the bandwagon when I was talking to you. And if I can do that, then...
Yeah, then that would be genuine evidence for your model, for sure.
Okay. No, I agree with everything you said. I wish I could talk more, but thank you, TJump. I really enjoyed this, and you're gonna get $20.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Wish you well.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else?
Hello.
Hi.
I had a question actually about your moral view.
Okay.
It's sort of a normative concern. So your principle, correct me if I'm wrong, that going against someone's desires is immoral. Is that
involuntary
the idea?
imposition of will, like only if their desires have to do with themselves and their property.
Okay, so imposing upon their desires as long as their desires only impact themselves or their property.
Yep.
And that's immoral.
Yep. So like if I want to scratch my nose and you stop me, that would be immoral.
Sure, okay. And whose desires count?
All
Anyone
conscious
with
agents.
a conscience. Right, okay. And that would include like babies and children.
Yep.
Would that include people with mental illnesses as well?
Sort of. So you have to have the ability to consent, so which means you have to have some minimum level of intelligence to be able to make those decisions, and it would be immoral for any universe to create any conscious agent that didn't have that level of ability to consent initially. So in our world, clearly children don't have the ability to rationally consent. So like forcing them to eat their vegetables or something would be immoral because they're forcing them to do something that's imposing their will, but it's required because if you don't do it, they'll get diabetes. So you're doing one immoral thing, forcing them to eat vegetables, in order to prevent a greater immoral thing, them getting diabetes. But in the moral universe, what would happen is they'd all get their own universe. So kids would be able to go to their own universe, and they would immediately be given an adult level intelligence and the ability to consent. Same with anybody who had a mental handicap. They would immediately be cured of that, given adult level intelligence. And then they could decide for themselves if they wanted to become children again, at which point you could no longer impose your will on them. So even if they were children, because they decided to be children as having the adult level consent, it would be immoral for you to stop them or force them to do anything at that point.
Right. So when you need to like sort of, I guess, extend the principle a little bit, if that's the case, to say that an immoral action is something that goes against someone's desires, as long as their desires are about themselves or their property,
And can consent.
and they have a certain level of intelligence.
Well, that's the consent part, but consent is entailed in will.
Uh,
So to will something is
I-
to consent to do the thing, consent the thing to happen. If you can't consent, then will is not as well defined.
I mean that there are some people who are very intelligent who want to commit suicide.
Perfectly moral.
Would it be moral to give someone like that a gun?
Yes. If they are fully intelligent, fully consenting adults, don't have a mental handicap, assisted suicide and euthanasia is perfectly moral.
No, but what if they have like clinical depression?
If they have a mental handicap that, depending on the legal precedent, I don't really know enough about psychology or biology, then they don't have the ability to consent anymore. And so that is the same as children. And so it would be immoral to like do certain things to them in that instance. The moral thing to do is just be cure them of their depression. That would be the moral thing to do. And if they can't be cured of their depression, then there are cases where it is justifiable to have someone be given assisted suicide, depending on the condition. So like depression can be one of them, that it is legitimately like major depressive disorder that is not curable. Yes, legitimately moral to help someone kill themselves.
But they have a desire, right? They have a desire to say, look, I want to die. Can you give me a gun? Right. And it seems like, on your view, it would be moral to give that person a gun.
Yes, if they're fully consenting adults, then yeah, it's moral to give them a gun.
I mean, I think that's immoral. Like, do you think I'm like irrational for believing that?
Yes. So like if someone
I'm irrational for believing,
if someone is suffering from like depression or ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease and they want their life to end, then it is moral to help them to end their life. And if you think it's immoral for someone to help these people in their suffering, then yes, I would consider you irrational.
no, it's not that I don't want to help people. It's not that I don't want to prevent suffering. Of course, I want to prevent suffering. It's just that I mean, there are principles that I'm not a strict utilitarian, right? So it's not just. I mean, I'm mostly a utilitarian. Most of my views line up with utilitarianism.
So let's suppose there's some other moral principle. Which moral principle would you be maximizing when you force someone to continue living if they are in constant emotional suffering?
Well, I'm a principle particularist. So
yes, which principle?
There might be cases where I think that it is moral to assist someone in committing suicide, potentially in some very, very, very rare cases.
Well, so I was asking a more general question. Pick any principle in any situation. Someone is an adult, they have major depression or Lou Gehrig's or ALS, and they're suffering and dying, and they want to end their life. What possible moral principle could exist that would make it moral to prolong their suffering?
I don't really know. Like, I don't hold to any principles per se. Certainly not any non all things being equal principles.
Well, the question is like, what
Like I
could
said,
make
I'm a
it
principled
moral?
particularist.
What instance could make it moral to continue this person suffering?
I mean, I don't really know. I'd have to think about it.
Okay.
But I'm just saying that, and I can grant for the sake of argument that if someone is in, like, let's say someone has a chronic medical condition and they've given 2 weeks to live and they're in constant pain.
Well, let's say they have 40 years to live.
40 years to live, and they'd be in constant pain. And if we know they're going to be in constant pain, then potentially it might be moral to.
Let's say we don't even know. Let's say we just have evidence to conclude that most people in this condition are in constant pain. You're probably going to do this. Who knows? Maybe miracles could happen, but this is most likely what's going to happen.
I mean, yeah, as the circumstances change, I don't really have a strong view on that.
Well, mine is like, so based on the evidence we have, there's lots of suffering. This person does not want to go through suffering. It is moral to give them a gun.
But on your view, it would be moral to give someone a gun who says, yeah, they're not in constant pain. They're just like, look, I want to kill myself.
Yeah, so if there's like a scientist who just says, I want to know what it's like to die. And so would it be moral to give them a gun? Yes. Yes, it would. There's the very last episode of The Good Place. The very last episode of The Good Place. In heaven, people have a door they can walk through to end their own existence. And that would be the moral thing to do, yes, is to allow them, to give them the option to end their own existence. So say everybody's in heaven and you're with their God and you're like, I just want to be over. I just want it to end. It'd be moral to give them the door, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that seems bizarre to think that it would be moral to give someone a gun if they're like, yeah, I just want to know what it's like to die. You know, I have a family, I'm not in constant pain, but you know, I just want to know what it's like to die. And it would be immoral not to give them a gun. It seems
no. It would be moral to give them a gun. You're not obligated to give them a gun. So if you don't, you're not being immoral.
Okay, fine. Either way, fine. It's moral to give them a gun, or if they go to shoot themselves, you prevent them. Right? You're imposing upon their desires. That would be immoral. Right. I mean, that seems bizarre.
It's their body, and if they're rationally adults consenting to the action and you're forcing them to stop and imposing your values on them, it's obviously immoral.
But wait, hold on. What if you don't want the sound waves from the gun going off to reach your ears, and then you stop them from shooting themselves to prevent that from happening?
If it's in your universe, it's moral to do that. So if they're in your universe and they're trying to suicide in your universe, like, bro, no gun sounds are allowed in this universe. Come on, immoral.
But what if it's a shared universe like this one?
Then the rules of the universe would have been agreed upon by both parties, and whatever they decided upon would determine which action is moral or immoral.
Okay, so it's a lot like this one. It's a shared universe, and none of the conscious beings had any say in how the universe was. The universe is
so it's just the universe like a random universe, and they just decided we consent to go into this random universe.
What?
It's just like this one. So within our own universe, like somebody tries to kill themselves, and it's like they want to die, and it's their gun, they bought it with their money, and they got all the ammo, all that shit. It's legal, and they're even in a country where we could even say that they're in a country where suicide's 100% legal.
Well, so if both parties consented to be in this universe, then neither would be immoral. If both parties consented to be in a universe where all these things are possible, then both neither would be immoral. Anything would be immoral, essentially.
Let's just say it's this universe. Let's just say.
But if they were forced to
say,
be in this world, if that being was forced to be in this world without its consent, and it wants to kill itself to get out of this world, stopping it would be immoral, because you're imposing.
Even if it's to stop the sound waves from reaching my ears.
Yes, because again, world isn't your property. You don't have a right over the sound waves. Like if it was your property,
Wait,
yes.
Wait, hold on. Wait, so are you against? Wait, hold on. Are you against regulations restricting how many decibels you're allowed to create in a suburban environment?
Well, those are owned by the government, so the government has property rights over those.
Oh, okay, so so the government owns the sound waves, not you. Okay.
Yes, so the government can say no suicide here. This is a sound regulated area. It's illegal to shoot guns here.
Okay, all right. That's all I was wondering.
I mean, I just don't know in virtue of why and I'm not a moral realist, so maybe that's why, but I don't know in virtue of what I'm irrational for thinking that it's immoral to give someone who wants to kill themselves a gun. Like, I just don't know.
So a person has been forced to live in a world they didn't consent to being in, and they want to escape it, and you're stopping them from escaping it.
Look, I understand that, obviously, right? That just means that they want to kill themselves, right? That they want to escape the world, right?
Right. So
like,
giving them a key to escape the world would be moral. So like if someone's in Auschwitz and they want out and you give them, hey, here's a key, go, that's moral. If you don't give them a key, that is not moral.
Yeah, no, you keep going to sort of extreme ones like Auschwitz and like chronic medical conditions and stuff like that. And
to see the obvious implication. So if someone is in a world they did not consent to be.
No, look, the point is that I might agree with you in certain circumstances that it's moral to give someone a gun. However, somebody with no chronic medical condition.
Also, I'm trying to draw the connection here is that the commonality of all of these things is that if someone is in a situation they do not consent to, regardless of what the situation is, whether it's Auschwitz or ALS or cancer or depression, or they just want to experience death, if they don't consent to being here, if they did not consent to being in this world, they were forced to be here against their will, is it moral to help them escape? Regardless of the situation, yes.
Okay,
no, and I'm saying I just disagree with that, right? I agree that in certain maybe extreme circumstances like Auschwitz or chronic medical conditions or something, it could potentially be moral to help that person commit euthanasia or something like that. Right? I'm not denying that. But what I am denying is that it's always moral, right?
Well, that case I was just explaining.
You can take circumstances where there is no medical condition, there is no Auschwitz. They just like, yeah, I just feel like dying, you know.
Yes, because they don't consent to being here. So if they are being forced to live in a world,
I understand that they don't consent, but there are many things that people don't consent to that I think that it's moral to do them. I think that it's moral to bring my cat into the vet when they're unwell. I think it's moral to.
That's not an adult. That's not a consenting adult. So if a consenting adult did not want to go to the doctor and you force them to go, that would be immoral. So you have to bring the analogy. So what would you be allowed to do to a consenting adult who is perfectly rational if they don't consent to doing? What is a moral thing to do against their will?
Yeah, look, I understand that. I'm just wondering in virtue of what I'm irrational for disagreeing with that.
Because I don't think you can rationally give an example of a case where you are able to force people who are consenting rational adults to do things and have it be a moral example. You have no instances of this.
Well, so let me try. Let me try to give an example of something like that. Well, let me try to give you an example. Okay, so let's say I'm a time traveler. Okay, and I'm from the future, and I meet somebody that in the future they want to be alive. They are glad that they never died before then, but in the past they were suicidal at some point. Okay, and they did want to die at that point, but now they wish that they wish that they weren't even suicidal. I go back in time to when they were suicidal and they did want to kill themselves, and I give them a gun and then they kill themselves. Is that immoral?
Nope.
Well, I think
Really?
that
No, because like they,
But would I not be violating?
their
Would I not be
future
violating
wills?
future them's will? Yeah, future will. Because do
No.
you own as an individual? Do you own all of your past, or do you not own your past?
I don't.
Does your past own your
I
future?
don't even know, because it depends on how you design your universe, essentially, which version of time has priority. So it'll be up to you. I don't know. I don't know how the universe works in that way.
see, I think that's immoral.
Time?
So no. Giving that person the gun, right? So you said that wouldn't be immoral. That would be a moral thing to do, to give them the gun. I think that would be an immoral thing to do. So there's an example.
Well, time travel
think,
is tricky for several reasons. So that's not really an example. But like,
Well, fine. Let's just take the time travel out, right? Let's just say that somebody wants to die, and we don't really know whether they'll want to live in the future or not. But we've got reasons to believe that they're probably going to want to live in the future. But at this moment, they're a consenting adult and they want to die. I think it would be immoral to give them a gun, but it seems like on your view, it would be moral
yeah, it's
to
still,
give
still
them
moral. So
a
it's
gun.
why would it be immoral to give them a gun? What immoral action have you done?
Well, I think it would be just irreducible. I mean,
What?
like I said, I don't hold to really many principles.
Well, there has to be like some
Uh,
definition of immorality, something that makes something immoral versus not immoral. So there has to be some definition there. And so what immoral action have you done by giving a consenting adult the ability to escape the world they don't consent to being in?
By definition, do you mean a principle?
Maybe, I don't know. I don't have any idea how you define it. Only how I define it.
Yeah, but there are particular. Well, I just understand morality to be, or immorality to be that which ought not to be done, and morality to be that which ought to be done.
Well, that's
And
just
I
a
think
tautology.
that's dependent.
By your definition, that's a tautology. So you just still say it ought to be done because reason X, Y, and Z. And so there has to be a because reason X, Y, and Z that determine what makes something moral and immoral.
No, that doesn't follow. There
Yes.
are people who are particularists.
Particularists still say
The
here are the
the
reasons that
reasons-
make something moral in X, Y, and Z.
No, but the reasons are going to be very case.
Yes, they can be
Specific if
case
there
specific,
are
but there still
any-
have to be reasons. Like in this
They're not gonna
case,
be any
here are the
principles.
reasons.
Okay, but those reasons are not going to apply potentially in any other case.
Yes, but that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking in this case, what are the reasons that make this immoral?
I
Um,
would think
you're
that in order
killing
to
innocent
hold that it's
life?
immoral, you would have to agree that your present self or your future self owns your past self, that your past self is the property of your current.
No,
or
but
future.
that's using T-Jump's principle.
Well,
which
yeah,
is fine to
well,
sort of
yeah,
try
obviously.
and show a contradiction in his view, but I'm just saying that that's not what I'm trying to do.
You're not showing a contradiction in his view.
I'm not trying to.
Well, yeah. So lulz,
so-
in your definition, giving a person a gun is immoral because reasons why?
Because I don't like
I don't care what you like. What you like doesn't matter to morality.
what no, that's what I mean by morality is like I'm a subjectivist.
Okay.
Morality is what I say, is what I like.
Okay. So one of the biggest problems with
But
subjectivism is I can just say I like something different.
I
and
can
then
be a moral realist for this
Right,
conversation. Like it doesn't really matter, right? Like I used to be a moral realist, so let's just say I'm a moral realist. Like in
Okay.
virtue of what am I irrational for thinking that it's immoral to give that person a gun?
because
I think it's immoral to give that person a gun.
there would have to be logical consistency with your use of the definition of morality and immorality, and it would have to be able to be applied consistently in your worldview. And if you're applying it in consistency, that would make you illogical. So if you're saying that giving a gun to someone who is trapped in this world and doesn't want to be here is immoral, you would have to have some definition of morality and immorality, and that definition would have to be able to be applied consistently. And if you can't apply it consistently, then you would be irrational for applying it in this instance.
Wait, So do you think all other moral views are irrational apart from yours?
No, irrational would be like a contradiction. So not all
Right.
other views have contradictions.
Okay. Do you think particularists are irrational?
Probably yes. I don't think their definition doesn't make sense because they say that some things are moral in some cases, but there's no singular factor that determines whether or not it's moral. It's on a case by case basis, and there's no actual principle. So yeah, I think particularism is pretty dumb. Yes.
But what's the contradiction?
Literally none of the principles that are applied in particularism can be applied consistently by definition.
So the contradiction is that they can be applied consistently and they can't be applied consistently.
No, they can't be. So like if you take any principle that says in this situation this is immoral. Oh, but in this situation it's not immoral. Okay.
Yeah, what's the contradiction though?
There's no consistent definition of morality.
No, I mean they might say morality is that which you ought to do, that which you ought not to
That's
do.
not a consistent definition.
But that which you ought to do and that which you ought not to do is dependent on the cases.
You still have to be able to give
Each
a consistent
individual
definition
case.
of what makes something an ought to do something and what makes something a not ought to do something. And until you can give a consistent definition that accurately can define how every single case is either one or the other, then you don't have a consistent definition. And I have never seen.
But that's just to beg the question against particularism.
No.
Yeah, because you're saying that I have to give a set of principles that describe the whole moral landscape. And that's precisely what particularists are going to disagree with.
But that's the problem, is that so you have no consistent principle that can differentiate moral things and immoral things. So if I give you just a particular example.
What's the problem? It just seems like an epistemic problem.
Yeah, that's so if you're trying to determine something is moral and immoral, and your epistemology can't do that, your epistemology is irrational to believe.
But look, this epistemic stuff is irrelevant.
You
look, I'm
said
asking
it was an epistemic problem. You said this. So like if it's rationality is the ability
I know, that's why I'm saying it's irrelevant.
So you asked the question, why is particularism irrational, right?
Yeah.
And rationality is the ability to follow premises to a conclusion, right? Essentially.
What you said irrationality was believing in contradictions or believing something that
right. So like an invalid having a set of premises that does not lead to the conclusion would be irrational, right? Like a contradiction.
Okay.
So if you have a worldview that is trying to determine something is moral and immoral, but you are completely unable to give the reasons or method to be able to determine if something is immoral and immoral, you have an irrational worldview. Now you can say that there is something out there. There's some particular, like for each particular, there is some set of properties that are going to determine it, but you have to give those. You can't just say it's arbitrarily how I feel it is based on what I feel. That's not a rational.
No, you might be. Look, some of the staunchest defenders of particularism are moral realists, right?
Sure.
So, I mean, you need to show that there's some problem with that view.
Yes,
I mean,
that's what I'm doing. I'm literally doing that right now.
Grant, but look, no, you're giving epistemic concerns. Look, let's just say for the sake of argument,
rationality is epistemic.
Look, just one sec. Let's just say for the sake of argument that you will never know whether something is moral or immoral, right? Under particularism.
Okay.
That's not showing that particularism is false. That's just showing that you're not going to know if something's moral or immoral in a given scenario because there are no moral principles you can apply. Now, I don't think that's true, but I mean, let's just say that is true. Like, what's irrational for believing in particularism? Particularism is true. You can never know whether something is moral or immoral, but it doesn't mean that particularism is false.
So if, say, particularism is true, that there is some truth to moral principles out there, but the truth to moral principles...
No, there's no moral principles.
You said there's a moral realist. So moral particularists are moral realists, right? Some of them?
Well, they can be.
Right, so they can
I mean, I'm a I'm a principle particularist and I'm not a moral realist. So you can be a particularist
Right. So I'm just going with
and not a
the
realist.
realist for right now. So moral realism, moral principles have a truth value, and if in particularism,
No, that doesn't follow though. That's begging the question against particularism.
you said there are moral particularists who are moral realists. Moral realism is the position. There are truth positions on moral principles. That's what it means.
No.
Yes.
No, there are true things that are moral or immoral.
That's the same sentence. There are true propositions
Not
for morality
principles,
is saying there are things that are moral and immoral. Propositions, true, false.
No, they don't believe in principles though.
Oh my God. So there has to be, for morality to be moral realism, there has to be a set of propositions, moral propositions, which have a truth value, true, false. That's literally what it means.
Okay, so right, so a particularist might say it was immoral for Hitler to gas the Jews, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's fine. That's fine. We can just go with that. So let's say.
Okay, but there's no principle.
Wait. So if under moral particularism, you believe that there are these things that are true or false, but if under particularism you can't ever know that something is moral or immoral because you can't differentiate which of the principles it is, then it is irrational to hold the position that Hitler gassing the Jews was immoral, because your method does not give you a way to determine if it was moral or immoral.
I don't see how that follows, right? So first of all, it wouldn't be irrational to believe in particularism, right? Because believing in particularism doesn't entail that you need to believe that some things are moral or immoral. You might be a particularist and just be an agnostic about all moral cases, right? So, but you might also be a particularist and just irrationally believe that Hitler was wrong. And that's not irrational, that's just irrational.
Well, it'd be irrational to try to go from particularism to that conclusion. You could.
Again, you'd need an argument for that.
Okay, so if something is irrational, it means it's not contingent on rationality. You're not using rationality to go from particularism to this statement. Now, you can come to this statement independently, just say you arbitrarily believe it or whatever, but you can't use particularism to justify this statement. I mean, that's what irrational means, not based on rationality. So you couldn't rationally use particularism to come to this conclusion based off of some justified belief, because that would be rationality. So if you're doing it irrationally, that means that you're not using rationality to go from particularism to this belief.
Yeah, but that's not irrational. That's just
okay. So if you're using a rationality to get to this belief, that means you're not using particularism to get to this belief. And that means if particularism doesn't offer us a set of principles to determine that this is true or false, it would be irrational to use particularism to get to this belief, because it doesn't offer any principles to be able to determine if this is true or false. If this doesn't say, here are the principles that determine if it's true or false, then you can't use it to determine if it's true or false.
So what?
That would, if you can't use it to determine if it's true and false, and you tried to use it to determine if it's true or false, that's irrational.
Sure, I might accept that. But I understand, and I do want to move off particularism, because I don't know, just you saying the particularism was irrational, I don't really understand that. But you think that a rational person can disagree with your view of morality, right?
Sure.
Okay. So wait, then in virtue of what am I irrational for disagreeing with you that it's immoral to give a person who wants to kill themselves a gun?
Because you would need some kind of principle to say why that's wrong. You need a consistent principle to say this is wrong. And you don't, based on the way that you have spoken, I don't believe you have a consistent principle to say why you're wrong. Therefore, I think you are immoral for believing that. Like if someone says, God says it's immoral to...
I'm immoral for believing it?
Irrational. So if someone said God says it's immoral to help people commit suicide, and so therefore you believe it's immoral to help people to commit suicide or something, that's perfectly rational because of your belief system. I think it's wrong and stupid, but it's rational. If you're a particularist, then it doesn't seem to make any sense because you're just kind of just making stuff up based on, in virtue of what? In virtue of, I made it up. That's irrational.
Well, you might be a particularist and a phenomenal conservativist, in which case you'd say, look, my intuitions lead me to believe that this action is right.
Yes, I would
and this
definitely
action is
consider
wrong.
that irrational. Yes.
Phenomenal conservativists are irrational.
Probably yes. Yes, definitely yes.
Believing something based on intuition is irrational.
Yes, 100%.
Wouldn't it be irrational?
No, because we have a positive evidence that intuitions are garbage and get things wrong the vast majority of the time. And so using a broken garbage system to justify beliefs would be irrational. Like using a compass you know is broken as a guide would be irrational.
But what about if you're just using your intuition about something that we don't have any background information on?
Using a broken compass to guide you to the moon is still irrational if you know it's a broken compass.
Right. I mean, phenomenal conservatism is fairly popular, so I don't know.
So is
that strikes
theism,
me
and
as
it's also very dumb.
is weird. But
What if it is my will to use a broken compass to guide me to the
Then
moon?
it's moral, but still irrational.
Oh, okay.
yeah, I mean, it just seems like, and I don't want to talk for too long, but it seems like, if you're, what it means to be rational, just morally or something. I don't really know what that means.
Yeah,
but
that was a side thing. It had
it's
absolutely
hap-
nothing to do with the conversation. Banana's question was kind of irrelevant to our conversation.
Sure. But okay, I mean, I can set up a consistent definition of morality that is perfectly logical, saying like killing people with green eyes is moral and everything else is immoral. I mean, okay, that's perfectly consistent, right?
Sure.
So giving the person a gun is immoral because I'm not killing someone with green eyes.
Sure.
Sleeping is right. That's perfectly consistent.
Yep. Stupid, but consistent. Yes, that would not be a
In virtue
logical
of what is it
contradiction in that
stupid?
belief.
But in virtue of what is it stupid?
It does not correspond to the evidence we have of morality.
Evidence of morality.
Moral intuition, moral progress, philosophical dilemmas.
Moral. Wait, didn't you say intuition was garbage?
If you're trying to use intuition to come to truth claims, yes, but intuition is a phenomenon that we're trying to explain, so you can still use it as a base phenomenon to explain something, but the intuition can't be like the thing that gives you the conclusion.
Wait, so okay, this seems to get into meta-ethical concerns.
Well, this was more like, so
can do that.
if I have an intuition something is true, that isn't a reason to believe something is true. But the fact that I have an intuition that the thing is true is a data point that we can use to try to understand the world.
Yeah.
So like if we all have an intuition that there's a God, we can then say, why do we all have this intuition? So the intuition is a piece of data that we're trying to explain, but simply believing the intuition because it's an intuition would be irrational.
Yeah, I mean, this gets into sort of more meta-ethical concerns because it seems like your moral realism is trying to describe why people have the moral intuitions they do, something like that. And I just take moral realism
the other way around
to not be trying to do that.
So it's like I say, because there is a consistent pattern in moral intuition and moral progress, that seems to indicate that there's something causing that. Yeah.
Wait, hold on. So
obviously things cause belief, but anyway, maybe that's a conversation for another day.
Well, hold on. So TJump, you've said before that you've used moral intuition as it is to say that objective morality is, something to do with will, things like that. and you've used the fact that moral intuition appears to point towards the alleviation of things that are imposing will as evidence towards objective morality being the elimination of things that impose will.
So, like I said before, intuition, if I had an intuition that there was a moral law or something, I couldn't say there is a moral law because I have an intuition there is a moral law. Moral intuition is a phenomenon. So I can say, like, if we all have a moral intuition, why do we have this intuition? So intuition is a thing that we can try to use to explain. It's a data point. It's a piece of evidence of something.
Right, but you
can't
use that data
use the
point.
fact that you have an intuition of X to justify X is true.
Right, but that's what you've done, though, by positing that objective morality exists and it is, avoiding impositions of will. You've, instead of using something that could probably be could probably equally explain the phenomena with less assumptions, like that's what you've done, though.
No, because mine's based on moral
Okay, how do you
progress.
not?
The consistent change over time in a specific direction is the key to my argument.
Well, if moral intuitions point towards the removal of impositions of will, then naturally moral progress, quote unquote moral progress.
Moral intuitions don't point towards anything. Moral intuitions are a phenomenon, and the pattern in change across intuitions over time is what points to something.
Hold on, maybe I'm using the word intuition wrong. Give me a second. No, a moral if a moral intuition is just let's see, what is it? Form of knowledge that appears in consciousness without obvious deliberation. So it's like just a thought that kind of pops into your head, and if those thoughts tend towards
No. The intuitions don't tend towards anything. And intuition is I feel punching babies is wrong or something.
Right, yeah, but they would tend towards.
No. They don't tend towards. The tending is
any one
particular. The tending is as time progresses, the intuitions people have all tend to change in a particular direction. So the intuitions don't point towards anything yet. The intuitions are relevant here. It's the change in intuitions over time that's important.
Well, okay, what if the intuitions do naturally tend towards something, and that's why it appears that they're changing to that thing?
That doesn't make sense.
Right, what do you mean that doesn't make sense?
So, like, the intuitions of cultures in the past was that LGBT was immoral. That was an intuition people had throughout most human history. And over time, we changed that. Our intuitions changed, and it's no longer seen as immoral in most Western cultures. And so the intuitions don't inherently point towards LGBTQ being not immoral. It's that there was a change. In the past, they were seen as immoral, and now they are not seen as immoral. And this change is the same change we see in every single area of morality, moral intuition. So moral intuitions are women were less important than men. Now we don't see that. That slaves were less important than masters. We don't see that. Children were less important than adults. It's okay to beat children. Like, the change in these intuitions is all going in the same direction. The intuitions don't point towards non-imposition of will. It's the change in impositions in all of these areas that seems to point towards non-imposition of will.
Somebody clip TJump saying it's okay to beat children. Also,
I mean, if it's you, only if it's you.
Okay. So, what? I mean, would you not say that intuitions can change due to other factors that do not include the existence of some sort of objective morality as a force in the universe?
Problem of underdetermination. There's infinitely many ways to explain the data.
Right, but then wouldn't you say that the way that explains them with the fewest number of, I guess, like, Occam's razor, fewest number of entities and assumptions?
No, I don't really care about Occam's razor. I care about novel predictions. So, yes, you can explain it with just evolution. That's fine. That's currently the most evidentially supported reason. I don't like that reason. I think that my reason is better, and I'm going to wait for evidence of mine to say I'm right, but mine makes novel predictions. And so, like, if we see the same moral intuitions changing across species in the same ways, whether evolutionary or not, that seems to imply it's more than an evolutionary process, and that proves it's more than evolutionary. And I think that's what we're going to see. I think that these patterns are going to persist throughout all conscious agents, independent of evolution, independent of social constructions. So even though that, yes, there are other ways to create the same data, I think this one's the best one, and it makes predictions, and I think my predictions are going to be right.
I mean, well, hold on. If it's changing across species, but like as it stands, all species on Earth like share common ancestors. I mean,
Right.
so like it could still just be evolution.
There are infinite, yes, it could be magical leprechauns. There's infinitely many things it could be. I don't care.
Well, yeah, okay, but again, that would still just follow.
Occam's razor is garbage
Occam's
and means
razor.
nothing. I don't care about Occam's razor.
Why is it garbage? Why do you
Because
think it's
simplicity isn't always the right answer. There are many more complex answers that are usually better in many cases, but that's separate issue.
Well, no, that's not Occam's razor.
Yes, it is.
Simplicity.
It's literally, literally it is. Literally it is. It's the simplicity. Occam's razor
Okay,
is.
well, hold on. What can you give me an example of a answer where the complex thing that makes the least posits the least amount of entities and also makes the least amount of assumptions, but is still more complex, is better than a simpler one?
Sure. A magical potato of the essence potato created everything. It's perfectly simple. Versus saying
you're right, but that kind of posits more.
Posits one extra
posits
thing.
more entities.
Posits one.
Yeah, it's one extra thing. Yeah, but that's still more entities.
That is simpler than saying there are billions of particles frictioning together to produce lightning. So let's say we're both living 2,000
well, no,
years ago.
because now you're explaining. Well, no, because you would still have to explain what lightning is and all of that. It would
that's
still
what we're doing. We're trying to explain lightning.
No.
We're trying to explain lightning. There's a phenomenon called lightning, and we're both living 2,000 years ago, and I say it's the magical potato, and you say it's friction and clouds. The friction and clouds caused by all these different things, particles, and I'm like, no, magical potato.
Right, but friction and clouds and all that can explain more things that you would otherwise need.
We're talking about Occam's razor. So no. Actually, that's false. The magical potato can explain literally everything. Literally everything. So the magical potato explains more, but it doesn't make a difference. So the magical potato is simpler. It explains more things. It posits less.
I mean, you're also positing. Well, no, it doesn't. It posits more things. It posits one extra thing. The extra thing being.
Well, no. So remember, in this model, 2,000 years ago, we didn't know about how lightning was formed, so we don't know those things yet. We're both positing different things. But magical potato, because it isn't a combination of known principles, particles, and laws, is worse than friction caused by clouds, even though all of the parts that you're talking about, friction between protons, neutrons, electrons, we don't have any evidence of that. But because it's simply combining physical processes that we do see in our world, as opposed to making up a whole new thing like a supernatural potato, would still be better, even if it's less simple.
Wait, hold on.
So like, let's say if we see a field of snow and there's a whole bunch of different prints of things we've never seen before.
Hold on. So atoms and like the existence of atoms and I guess like it's more individual entities, but it's significantly less in terms of number of types of entities.
No, it's not.
Like the existence of atoms explains so much.
Oh my God!
Like, so many different things.
Can explain literally everything. The everything that is.
No, it can't.
What? Do you not? Oh my God!
No, it can't.
So this is called the magical leprechaun theory. You can say a magical leprechaun created everything in the universe 5 seconds ago and gave us false memories. Like magical leprechaun literally explains everything. Literally everything.
Right, but it also posits the existence of one extra thing.
That's
in addition to everything.
So
no, that's the part that does matter because that makes it now more complex.
You're not getting it. So like, I'll try to. I want to give you a simpler example that you might understand better. So let's say we've never seen any animals, no horses, no squirrels, no rabbits, whatever. We go to a field of snow.
Okay.
And there are a whole bunch of different like footprints, squirrel, rabbit, horse, whatever. And we have two options. I say a magical leprechaun did all of these on his own. And you say, no, it was probably a whole bunch of different animals we haven't discovered yet. The whole bunch of different animals is a bunch of things we've never seen before. You're positing a whole bunch of different complex entities that are all individually culpable to different parts that don't have anything to do with one another. And I'm saying magical leprechaun, and he did all of it himself. Which one's better?
Right. I mean, I guess like you're positing the existence of magic at that point. So it's like, what the hell is magic, and what the hell is the leprechaun? Like, I guess you'd have to explain what those things are first.
No, you don't. It doesn't make a difference. So you're positing these new animals.
No, I mean, you kind of
we've never
do,
seen
because
an
it
animal.
starts in-
We've never seen an animal, and you're positing animals.
Right.
So you do the same problem. So it doesn't make a difference. There's no difference there.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, well, no. Like, I mean, you're still positing like these. Well, you're still positing the existence of magic, and you're
Yes.
still positing the existence of a leprechaun, and those things are going to have properties, right?
So
Magic
are
and
animals. But you don't know
leprechauns.
the properties of animals. I don't know the
Well,
properties
yeah,
of magic.
no, I understand. That's what I'm saying. It's like, so, but yes, like we need to go and look at what,
No,
okay,
no,
what
we
are the
don't. No, we
properties
don't.
of
No, we
magic, and what are the
don't. No, we
properties?
don't.
You would, because those are all things.
None of that
those are-
matters.
Each of those
None
properties.
of that matters.
Yeah, it does.
None of that matters because it's all made up in your head. So none of that matters. What matters here is that
Wait, no.
you're positing a thing which is only combinations of stuff that's already been demonstrated to exist. I'm positing a thing which is a new combination or stuff, something that has never been demonstrated to be of the previous stuff we've already demonstrated. That's what matters. The level of complexity doesn't make a difference. Level of simplicity doesn't make a difference. I don't care. The more complicated Rube Goldberg machines versus a magical leprechaun that just presses a button. I don't care. What makes it different is one is only built with principles and particles and laws that have been demonstrated to exist independent of our imagination. And anytime you add a principle, particle, and law that hasn't been demonstrated to exist independent of our imagination, it's stupid. I don't care how simple it is.
Well, right. Yeah. Well, no, that's exactly my
That
point.
is not
right?
simplicity.
Because yeah, that is simplicity,
Literally
actually.
not. No.
Well, yes, because once you add something new in that way, that you're adding the number of entities, and Occam's razor says no, fewest entities possible. So if you're adding a new,
like if there's a billion known entities,
that's part of.
if there's
no,
a
that's
billion
part of.
known entities,
Yeah.
and you're using a billion entities versus one unknown entity, the unknown entity is worse, even if it's simpler. I don't care if it's simpler.
Right. Yeah, because that's an assumption.
Sort of. Yeah.
So the unknown entity would be the unknown factor that would fall under the assumption category in terms of like the least amount of entities and assumptions.
No, I could have billions of
in terms
assumptions.
of
I have
fraud
billions of
theory.
things, and I have billions of assumptions of how those things interact. But they're all just parts of things that we've already seen before, like string theory. String theory,
Right.
essentially that. So billions of assumptions, billions of parts we've never seen, but they're all a
Right.
result of physics. It's a combination of different mathematical laws in physics. Now I can take that.
Right.
String theory is like the least complicated thing possible because it's literally everything that could possibly happen does happen, and there's a universe of it all everywhere. And I could say that or Magic Sky Daddy. Which one's simpler?
I mean, going based off of how I'm talking about simple, I would say that the former, not the latter. The Sky Daddy is not the simpler explanation there, because you're both positing. You're doing both. I don't mean you specifically, but you're doing both. It's both adding an entity and creating assumptions at the same
There
time.
are just
So
as many. There are more assumptions in string theory than there are assumptions in God.
I don't think so.
Literally,
I disagree with that.
Literally every possible
I would
universe,
disagree with that.
every possible universe actually exists. That's the thing in string theory. So these are assumptions. Like there's no evidence of this. This is an assumption. There is an assumption that the strings interact in this way to produce the quantum fields, which then produce space-time. All assumptions. There are lots and lots of assumptions in string theory.
Okay. I still think that like the positing the existence of like a god, especially like most any particular religious god, as is understood by most religions that actually exist, is still going to generate more assumptions than that. I still think that.
I don't at all. Like literally, it's string theory, infinitely many assumptions. Literally every universe ever, no matter what, they all exist. Infinitely many assumptions. I don't think God has infinitely many assumptions because literally it's made up.
I don't think that's an infinite number of assumptions. I think that's one assumption.
Oh my god.
I think that's an infinite number of assumptions. I think that's one assumption, which is like
all possible universes exists. One assumption.
That's one statement, though. Like each of those, I mean, like
God
I mean,
exists
that's
is one statement.
I guess you could say that's an infinite number. You can, yeah, that's one statement, so one assumption, but it's it assumes an infinite number of entities, but it's still just one assumption. So I
Okay,
guess
so
you could say
God
that,
exists is
but
one assumption,
it's
right?
adding an infinite number. God exists is one assumption, but then once you start thinking about like, well, okay, what are the properties of that
What are
God?
the properties
Then
of string
those
theory?
properties are going to
What are the
generate.
properties of those universes?
Well, the properties of string theory, you'd have to go and take some college courses on that, I guess. But as for the properties of God, like
yes, the properties of string theory
there's-
are strings. They're the strings that are 11-dimensional strings that make up everything in the universe, and that they're tinier than what we can see. The string theory. So these are all assumptions. God has one. He's the essence of existence. Society garbage nonsense. He's one assumption.
Yeah, he's one of, yeah, it's sure. I mean, it's these. First, you assume the entity, and then you talk about, once you start talking about the properties of that entity, it's going to generate more assumptions.
And there's absolutely there's no way to go through this line and not find that there are more assumptions on string theory than God.
Okay, well, I mean, like in Christianity, for instance, or like, well, any Abrahamic
Christianity,
religion.
like obviously, if you pick a particular,
Well, hold on. Just hold on. So any of the Abrahamic religions, there's going to be the idea that God is like all powerful, all knowing, all XYZ, omni, this, that, and the other thing. Now, the assuming those properties, assuming each of those properties is itself an assumption, but then also
those are the same as string theory, though.
It is, huh?
The same with string theory.
Okay. Sure. I mean, I guess. I still, I mean, those each one of those would be more as one extra assumption, though.
Okay.
And then, like, when you go and you think about, okay, well, what can God do with those things? Those are each of those are assumptions. Whereas with string theory, it's not.
Wait, what? Those are the same. Those are the same. So all the things that string theory can capably do, it actually does do them. So it's not just capable; it does do everything it's capable of doing. Whereas God only does one thing, which is create this universe.
Well, no, that's not necessarily true. God may have created infinite number of universes.
If his magical, infallible word is correct, he only created this universe.
Okay, what if this universe is like infinitely huge?
There's no way to compare string theory and God and come to the conclusion there are less assumptions on God, because simply by virtue of the fact God was made up by a bunch of goat herders, their intellectual capabilities were not sufficient to make enough assumptions as what were done in the.
Okay, so regardless of how many assumptions were actually realized by the people that made it up versus the number of assumptions that could be realized, those are two different things, I would think.
No, because like they're literally just positing there's another substance. It is the God aseity substance, and it created this universe. That's it. That's like literally the essence of their whole thing. There is this new substance out there. Don't know how it works. It created the universe. Done. Problem solved.
Kind of posited some attributes to it, so as to how it works. Like they obviously said that they couldn't fully understand how it works, but they posited certain things about like
the original goat herders did not.
Yeah, no, the omnipotent
Bible.
God.
That's something that was added later. Those are not in the Bible.
Okay, well, that's fine. Like the fact that they were added later, it's still a pretty universal belief amongst.
It's not required. So again, any type of model you do for a God is going to entail less assumptions and properties than string theory, because string theory, real things are more complicated than imaginary things. The simplicity factor is stupid. It is easier to make up simpler ideas, and they're probably garbage and probably don't work. Real things, reality is complicated and hard, and so trying to make an idea based off of simplicity is stupid.
Okay, well, if they don't work, then like obviously they don't work, and like
that has nothing to do with simplicity. Simplicity is not working. Things can be simple and not work all the time.
Well, no, Occam's razor applies to explanations, right? If an explanation doesn't work, then it's not an explanation, or it's not a.
I wish that was the case. No, that is definitely not the case.
I think like if you're utilizing
like literally
the
most
razor
of
properly,
science
then that would be
never
the case,
actually works 100% of the time. It fails, and we usually discover a new thing. But explanation doesn't mean it works. It just means it works as far as we can tell. That's all it means. It works as far as we can tell. That's it. Doesn't mean it actually works.
Well, sure, but then yeah, but then once we discover how it doesn't work, then we generate something else. Then okay, now this works. Then
Right. But works as far as we can tell can also apply to magic.
Sure, but then as you said, it probably doesn't work, and we can probably make it so that magic doesn't work a lot sooner than
No, we can't.
some other thing.
we
Right? We
can't.
can probably find out that XYZ thing
Because
doesn't
of
work
ad
a lot
hoc
sooner than.
reasoning, it's harder to make things not work when they're imaginary unless they have hard constraints. Falsificationism. So unless you have falsification constraints, which the really complicated ones do, and the really simple ones don't, by design, it's harder to actually falsify the simple theories that are garbage and that are made up than it is to falsify the complicated theories that are more realistic.
Well, then why haven't the current complicated theories been falsified?
Most of them have. What are you talking about? It's why we only
I'm
have.
saying about the current ones that are in use and are popular.
Because all the other ones were falsified. Like Newtonian mechanics was falsified. That's how we got general relativity. Like science has been just a series of falsified beliefs that were then replaced by newer beliefs, which are then falsified.
I know falsification
God
happens.
doesn't get falsified because it's ad hoc, even though it's simpler.
The idea of a omnipotent God is like
not as complicated as string theory.
Self-falsifying.
I don't understand how.
Well, yeah,
string theory is omnipotent. Or how is string theory self-falsifying?
I wouldn't say that it's omnipotent because it's like the idea of like a personal omnipotent being. Then you just ask, say, okay, well,
can it lift a rock?
Isn't one that I would use.
Lift it? Oh.
Yeah, that kind of silly thing, which is not
like yes, that definition would be self-contradictory. Yeah, but omnipotent in this context just means powerful enough to create all logically possible universes, which string theory literally does create all logically possible universes.
I've met people that think that like God is so powerful that he can violate logic.
Yes, I know those people too, but that's not the academic version.
Right. I don't remember what the original.
It was potatoes. Anybody else got any questions?
Okay, magic potatoes. Yeah.
No, hey, I guess this is a conversation from a while ago. I'll keep it short. I'm not a mental health professional, and I think it was a conversation on whether or not a scientist chooses to kill himself just for the sake of knowledge or whatever. Yeah. I think by definition, like, because suicide is like a marker of like depression, by definition, if you have any thought or feeling of suicide, then you would be depressed. Like, I think a couple examples I would use would like be gaming addiction if it messes with their life or something. No, those wouldn't be good examples. My bad. It's been a while since we talked about that.
So first thing is,
I didn't even write it all down.
Suicide, while suicidal implications are used in diagnosis of depression, suicidal thoughts don't mean you are depressed. There are many ways to get that are not depressed, including being religious. Like you can be religious and think you're dying and going to heaven, and you can be excited about it and you're not depressed. So being suicidal, while it is an indication of, can be used as an indication of clinical depression, doesn't mean you are depressed.
Right. Shit, I had many more thoughts, but let me read. Yeah, I would probably agree with that. No, I guess they just had questions about how we would define a mental illness, I guess, then. That would just kind of...
I would usually define a mental illness as something that is inhibiting your ability to function.
And function to you would be...
the ability to think and process and achieve your own goals.
Okay. Your own goals would be dictated by evolution.
Typically, in biology and chemistry in your brain, neurology, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just, would you consider autism a mental illness or a neurodivergent, like, or just part of neurodiversity?
I don't know how. I don't know how they're defined in that way. So in many cases, autism especially severe autism, is considered a mental illness because it makes you incapable of functioning in society, and so it can be considered a mental illness when it is that severe. Yes.
Right. Just like the severity, yeah.
Yeah.
But like, shoot, I think I had a point in here. I'm trying to read off. Obviously, I think you can be diagnosed with a mental illness if you're not aware that you're mentally ill.
Right. I mean, you can be diagnosed with a mental illness and not have a mental illness because psychology is stupid.
Right. That's true too. I had a point here, and I should have just written it all down because I can't even remember what I was thinking of. I think, yeah, I think I spoke what I wanted to speak, and let someone else take over.
Cool.
So I've got a question about like the I think therefore I am epistemology thing. So it seems like that idea, like I think therefore I am, is already positing in some sort of like presupposed logic tree, you know?
The sentence,
like why is it?
The sentence requires logic and English. So the sentence, I think therefore I am, is an English sentence. So you're presupposing English to express the sentence. But the sentence does not matter to the point that the sentence is expressing. So the point the sentence is expressing doesn't presuppose logic, doesn't presuppose anything. It's just saying you have an experience. It's like saying there is a rock. It is a description of an actually existing event. And so because you have an experience and this is an existing fact in the world, you don't need logic or anything. It doesn't presuppose anything. It's just there is an experience and you're describing it. And that's it.
Okay. Do you think that like I guess is it intuitively not the case, or is there anything except intuition that prevents the idea that you can both think and not exist?
What?
Like, is that a possibility? I can think and not exist.
Well, the way I define you is the thinking. So you are the thinking. So if there is a thinking thing, that's you. And if there is no thinking thing, then you don't exist. So it's possible for you to exist without thinking, but it isn't possible for you to think and not exist.
Okay. And after that like point where you say I think therefore I am, how does the other stuff follow? Like about like founding other parts of your
So I start with I think therefore I am, and there is some difference between my imagination and reality. So if I look at a TV screen and I think of a unicorn, the unicorn doesn't appear in my vision. The TV screen does appear in my imagination. And so there's some difference between the imaginary things and the experiential things. And you need some method to differentiate between which one is which of the things you're imagining and experiencing. And that methodology is science. And so from that, I can build science, and by describing the differences and labeling the differences between the things, that's where I get logic and math and stuff. And so simply by looking at the differences between my experience and my imagination, I can get logic and math, and then science. And then from that, try to infer which ones are the experiential things. And from that, I can infer which hypotheses more likely correspond to reality, because my imagination is bad at predicting the future. So if I have a hypothesis that can accurately predict the future, that's a good reason to believe the hypothesis conforms to something outside of my imagination, to the reality at which I am making predictions about. And if the predictions entail there is like an external world, then I can get to an external world. And if the predictions entail the world is 13.8 billion years ago, I get to 13.8 billion years ago. So it's I think therefore I am, some difference between my imagination and my experience, logic, math, a method to differentiate the two, which is science, and then novel testable predictions to give us accurate beliefs about reality, something like that.
Okay. I guess with the like differentiating your imagination from reality, doesn't that come with some sort of already presupposition that you can trust your senses?
No, so it's
like, isn't that already
the original way it's phrased is the difference between my experience and my imagination. So it's just saying if I imagine a unicorn, I don't see one in front of me. There's no assumptions there. It's again just a descriptive fact of an experience I'm having.
Right.
And so that's the first stage. And then once I get to a stage, I need some way to differentiate between these two. And then there's science. I get to science over tens of thousands of years of the scientific method. And so after I have science, and science says the reason we should believe something is true is if it makes novel predictions about the future. And so if I have a hypothesis, there is an external world, and that makes successful predictions, then I have a reason to believe there's an external world.
Gotcha. All right. Thanks.
Yep. Anybody else got questions? I got about 4 minutes left, I guess. Demi, what is up?
Hey, sorry, just making sure you can hear me. Making sure I was hearing what you were saying properly, and it may just be a nitpick or anything. It's not like I'm really have a greater point. I was just curious. You had said earlier, just correct me if I misheard you, that what your defense of the cogito doesn't presuppose like any logic at all.
Yep.
You were saying.
Yep. That is correct.
Doesn't it still presuppose the law of identity?
Nope.
It's still like one of the laws of logic. Nope. So experience is not experience, even under your description.
It's not
how you're saying that you can
presupposed
define
in
these
the
things.
argument. No. So the statement, I think, therefore I am, is simply a description of an experience that is occurring. So like I see a TV or whatever. That experience presupposes nothing. Experiences don't presuppose anything. You don't presuppose something to have an experience. Now, in order for me to describe the experience, the sentence I'm using to describe the experience will presuppose logic and English, because it's an English sentence. But that's irrelevant to the point, because the point is just the experience that I'm describing. Does the experience presuppose logic? No, experiences don't presuppose something. The rock that exists over there doesn't presuppose anything, but it's still existing. So no, the cogito does not presuppose anything, even though the sentence I use to describe the cogito does presuppose logic and English and stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, was specifically like the semantics we would use to talk about it.
Yeah, so the semantics absolutely presuppose English, because it's literally English and logic. But I think therefore I am, the thing that it is referring to isn't the sentence, it's the experience. So the experience that I'm having, I can't be having that experience and not exist. And so I exist since I'm having that experience. And so the logic and stuff is presupposed in the sentence expressing this, but literally it's just saying I exist. There's an experience there of existence, and that's it.
Okay. I just wanted to get clarification on what you meant. I see what you mean. All right.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, if anyone else has questions, I'm just gonna head it back down.
David, question.
Yes. Yeah, so I don't understand really. So you said basically that our thoughts, so do you think our thoughts are subjective? That's what, do you think our thoughts are subjective?
Yes, in that they are your subjective experience. They objectively exist, but they are your subjective experience.
Well, I disagree. Like, I do think I think we can think objectively, but I think our subjective thoughts make us our feelings and experience influence our thoughts. But we can feel if you think more rationally, and I think we can think more objectively.
That makes no sense.
It makes sense because you're not allowing any feelings or experience to influence it.
So subjective experience objectively exists, even if the way you're thinking is subjective and based on your feelings. So the way you're thinking doesn't matter to whether or not your thoughts objectively exist. And so if you're trying to think in a way that conforms to reality, yeah, you should try to use non-subjective feelings.
Sure, but the reason why it's subjective is because of feeling and experience. So if you get rid of those stuff, would you call it objective then? Like, would you call it objective?
So subjective things objectively exist.
So subjective thoughts objectively exist.
Yes. I am thinking of a unicorn, and that is my subjective experience. But the fact that I'm thinking of a unicorn is an objective fact in the universe, regardless of anybody's opinion.
No, that's not true. That's that's an object. TJump, look, wait. It's an objective thing. It's an objective thing within your head. Yes, sure.
It's an objective thing in reality, which my head is a part of reality.
Yeah, sure. No matter whatever someone else believes, they can't disregard that you believe in a unicorn. I do agree on that. Yes.
Yes. So if I have a thought of a unicorn, that thought literally exists in reality, independent of what anybody.
Yeah, but does that make it true? It's like,
what?
Does that make it true? Because people would say, okay, my analogy was dumb. They would say, okay, just because I think there's God, therefore God, you know.
Well, just because you think God,
know,
it is a
objective.
fact that there is an imaginary figure of God in your head, and that is an objective fact.
Sure. But you know, the thing is, right? I mean, when you add anything to anything, you're adding space. So like, when you add,
no, you are not.
it is.
No,
This is you
no,
are. You are.
no.
You
When
are.
I add pixies to leprechauns in my head, I am not adding space.
You're adding space to do work. Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Why would you disagree?
Space is something that exists as a part of quantum fields. You don't create space. Physics creates space.
You do.
You do not create space. No.
So you don't believe in consciousness then?
I do believe in consciousness. Consciousness does not create space.
Bro, this logic. So I'll make the pair of stockings analogy. Okay.
What?
So
I've
just
never
take it
heard
with a piece
this
of bread.
analogy. Go ahead.
So think of a pair of stockings, right? They're silky, smooth, and stuff. But yet, when you stretch them, they're thick and they're really tight and stiff, right?
Okay.
So so the thing is actually, that because when you use them normally, they're silky and smooth. But when you stretch them, when you let's say when you stretch them, which means adding space, they become tight and thick. The reason why this happens, TJump, is because you stretched it. You added something to it. You added length to it. You added something.
No, it's
It's
because
the same with imagination, right?
no, you literally did not add space to it. You took space up by stretching it. You didn't add anything to it other than energy when you pulled it. You did not add space to it. It's the dumbest analogy ever.
So the pair of stockings analogy is dumb.
Yes, objectively, it is objectively dumb.
What? How could you say that? It objectively exists.
Yeah.
You said that yourself.
It is objectively dumb.
So wait, because it objectively exists, does it mean it objectively works?
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because like you said, because if I understand this right, so you don't think there's any objective truth, or objective facts within the universe that we can't deny? Because
Of course, what you can deny anything. You can deny that you exist, and I will probably believe you. But like what we can deny doesn't make a difference. What matters is are there objective truths? Yes, I exist. That's an objective truth.
okay, like would you agree with Antengelo's like viewpoint on
No.
with just because God says this, because God said it, that's what it is, right? Would you believe that?
Makes no sense.
Because God makes magic, He's magic, and He's everything magic, and because magic is everything, then we're everything, and we're
That's
magic.
even more
would you believe that?
incoherent than the things Antangelo says.
No, he says this stuff. No, because I do hear Antangelo sometimes.
Antangelo does not say that. That is definitely not something he said. He usually brings up the intelligent design argument, not the God is magic because he does magic argument. That's a new one.
Okay, sure. What made you like go away from the Christian God? Really?
Too many potatoes.
Too many potatoes.
Yes.
What do you mean by that? Like too many potatoes, and where? In your head, or?
Yep, that is it. Yes.
Okay, so too many potatoes in your head.
Yep.
Let's see this.
Yep.
So what were you cooking then? What were you cooking? You had to cook these potatoes some type of way, or you ate them cold.
Cake pizza.
Egg pizza. Do you like egg pizza?
Yes. Yes.
Why do you like egg pizza?
Because there's no pineapples on it.
That's subjective.
So it's objective.
Yeah, anyone I can like anything I want. I can even gain new likes right? Actually, the thing is, right? I feel like maybe have it maybe switched because nature is presumably objective. Whatever nature sets out is objective, right? Example, natural desires; those are objective, right? But the thing about the moral argument, I actually had this conversation before, and do you think it's objectively wrong to hurt someone or just touch someone?
No, some people want you to. Please don't touch me.
Yes, sure. So if you understand this right, would you say it's objectively wrong to touch someone?
No. I mean, for you, yes.
Okay.
For you, if you touch someone, it's objectively wrong because literally no one wants you to touch them.
How would you know that though? Maybe people like being touched. Maybe people like sugar daddies and whatever.
No, specifically for you. So no one wants you to touch them. That is the key. I know this. It's a fact.
How would you know that though?
Psychic.
That's you presupposing that the person doesn't like it.
Yes.
Bob told him.
Bob told me. That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. What? So give me any testable predictions that God told you. Can we test these things that God told you?
No, not God. Bob.
Bob.
Yes.
Who's Bob?
Bob, I can give you testable predictions. Bob said.
Okay.
Bob said this is going to happen, and then Bob said that in exactly 30 seconds, I'm going to leave because I have an appointment, and Bob is going to be right.
And I can't say anything to change that.
Nope.
Technically, that's not Bob making the prediction. That's you relaying Bob's supposed prediction.
Yeah, so Bob
right?
made the prediction, he told me, and then I told you. That's how predictions work. It's fine.
Yeah, no,
Well, yeah, but hold on. We don't actually know that Bob made the prediction. You could be lying about Bob making the prediction.
It's since I know it, I'm justified in believing it, even though you don't know it.
There you go. All right.
Peace out. I'm gonna go.